Hello, hello, hello. This is CRP speaking to you live on this Sunday, February 13th, 2022. Oh, yeah. I'm here in Kharkiv, eastern Ukraine. And as you can hear behind me, the bombs are falling. The tanks are rolling down the avenue. Yes, the invasion is. Wait. I'm getting. Oh, there's no invasion. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You all have probably been hearing all kinds of nonsense about. Oops, sorry about that. I forgot to put my microphone here. You guys have probably heard all kinds of nonsense about the supposed invasion of Ukraine by Russia. This Tuesday, I'm going to be on the Duran. We're going to be recording some segments discussing this particular issue and a bunch of other issues that have been going on. The issue in Canada, just all kinds of craziness that's going on in our world. But I just want to tell you guys that I've heard from you a whole lot of good wishes and hoping that I get out of Ukraine as quickly as possible, before the bombs start falling and all that. There isn't going to be any war, okay? At this time, you know, the odds I think are minuscule, quite frankly. And from what I am hearing here on the ground, 40 kilometers away from Russia, nobody seriously thinks that there's going to be a war. Not here in Ukraine, at any rate. There is the possibility, of course, that the Ukrainians launch some sort of weird attack or something that provokes a Russian response, and that leads to war, certainly. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, an American submarine of the Virginia class attack submarine was caught by Russian ships in Russian territorial waters, and the submarine, the American submarine, was clearly not there doing anything nice, probably trying to provoke some sort of reaction. The American administration, the Biden administration, has been going out of its way to claim that a Russian attack is imminent. It's imminent. It's going to happen like any day now. And so there's the real fear that the Americans will actually do something so as not to look foolish. I mean, their pride is so great that they are willing to ruin the lives of 40 million people here in Ukraine so that they don't have an embarrassing news cycle back in Washington. I mean, that's how insane these elites are, the elites in Washington. And so I think it's a good time to be talking about those elites. That's what I'm going to be talking about now. And I'm going to be talking about how divorced from reality these people actually are. Mm. But anyway, to all of you well wishers, thank you so much. And be assured that I'm looking after myself. And be assured that what I'm hearing on the ground from people with a lot of contacts in Russia at this time, there's no war. The Russians are not preparing to invade Ukraine. It's the farthest thing from their mind. That they might be fucking with the West, with the Europeans and the Americans, oh, sure, no question. The Russians are great at trolling. But actually invading, see, no. Because a large-scale invasion takes an enormous amount of preparation. It makes a lot of noise to gear up to that point. And the fact is, nobody here on the ground is hearing those noises. And the thing that is most indicative, to me at any rate, that nothing is going to happen is the exchange rate. You see, about a month ago or so, I had to pay off my children's private school. It was a few $1,000s, and I exchanged those few $1,000s at 26 and 85 grivnas per dollar. I remember that number very clearly, of course, because it was several thousands of dollars. And I exchanged it. It must have been about a month ago, I would say, at 26.85, and the split at the time was 26.95. I think that is the split between the buying and selling. Okay, that's how you measure an exchange rate, by the split. And now the split, no, it must have been like 26.92. It's not really important. The important thing is that, see, over the course of this crisis, the exchange rate ballooned up to the split to 28.6. Okay. And that is roughly 1.8 grivnas per dollar. roughly 8% with this full-on talk of war. And that peaked last week, last Monday, Tuesday, I believe. And then slowly it's been coming down. Right now it's at 28, 28 even. That's the split. And, that gives you an indication as to whether there's going to be a war. Because back in 2014 and 2015, when the Ukraine lost Crimea and then had a financial crisis between 2014 and 2015, well, that's when the hryvnia went from 8 hryvnias to the dollar to 14 hryvnias to the dollar almost overnight, and very quickly after that rose all the way up to 25 hryvnias per dollar. Okay, so it lost a third of its value. Okay, against the dollar. The dollar became 3 times more valuable against the hryvnia. And that was a financial crisis. It wasn't like an actual war, because at that time, the Russians took Crimea practically without a shot. And there was like low intensity, like fighting in the Donbass, but not really like falling apart. But the economy got hit with this a currency shock. Now, no such shock is happening because the people in the know, the money people, they know that nothing is going on. And you in the West, especially you in the United States and the United Kingdom, you're hearing lies told to you about by your government. Not even the president of Ukraine at this time, right now, is saying that there's going to be a war. In fact, the opposite. He's saying that there isn't going to be any war. This is Washington bullshit, and that everybody should just calm down and not panic because there's nothing to panic over. Okay. Now, this is, to me, it's just so indicative of the bullshit that we have been experiencing, certainly over the last 2 years, but it's been going back for a while now. And it's because of the elites that we have. The elites that we have and the education that they have gotten has turned them into these fucking morons. They're very, very smart people with a lot of IQ points, but they're fucking morons. Hmm? And I'm going to start this broadcast by showing you a video that I think is very indicative. Let me just close myself out because it's not really important that you see me, but I want you to see this. Oops. What the hell happened here? Uh, Sorry. Let me just. No, I don't want to see that. Um, okay, wait. Let me find it. There we go. Share. Um, yeah, as usual, by the way, let's ask where Tiffany Dover is. Okay. Now I'm going to play a video. I hope that you guys can watch it properly. Let me just go to the chat just to check that everything's copacetic. Um, uh, um, yeah. So here's the video. This is Ned Price. This is exactly a week ago. He gave this briefing. He is the spokesman for the State Department, or spokesperson. I'm sorry, Ned Price is, went to Georgetown University to the Foreign Service School, and then he went to the CIA where he worked for a few years, and then quit in disgust when Trump became president and wrote a bunch of op-eds and saying how evil Trump was, blah blah blah. And now he's part of the Biden administration. Ned Price, Edward Ned Price, that's his name. He is openly gay, and he is the first openly gay spokesperson for the State Department. Mm, You know, breaking barriers. I want you to listen to this because this exchange is extremely illuminating. Okay. Okay, here we go. Oh, shit. Okay, no audio. Okay, hang on a second. Let me try to figure out how I can fix this. No audio. We don't hear any audio. Shit, shit, shit. Then it's sort of like it's pointless for me to run it. Okay. Um, God damn it. Yeah, I'm not going to run this video because if you guys can't hear it, there's no point in running it because it's not like the guy's face is not important. What matters is oh god damn it, that's annoying. Hang on, let me just fix this and go back to the old thing that I was showing to you guys. Um, yeah, uh, god damn it, I'm pissed off. Okay, so anyway, the upshot. Okay, this guy Ned Price is saying in this video clip that the Russians are going to stage a false flag operation with crisis actors and show like destruction and victims and so on and so forth. Okay, like they're going to stage a false flag operation to give justification for their invasion of Ukraine. It's going to happen in the next few days. So there's this journalist called Mike Lee of the Associated Press, an old guy. You know, one of those old guys who's been around. You know, he might not have all the accreditation, and accreditation is going to be a big thing that I'll talk about in just a minute. But he has, you know, experience on the ground. He's been around. He's not a fucking idiot. I mean, you just listen to it. And even though he's wearing a mask and you can't really see his face, the motherfucker, Mike Lee, this Associated Press reporter, he's been around. You know, this is ain't his first rodeo. Okay. And so he says to Ned Price, well, why don't you show us the proof of this assertion you're making? And Ned Price goes and says, "Well, this is the proof." And Mike Lee says, "Well, no, you're just asserting that this is going to happen." And Mike Lee goes on to say, "You know, you're talking about actors and stage false flag operations. This sounds like Alex Jones level bullshit." Okay, it doesn't say use the word bullshit, but he does refer to Alex Jones. And Ned Price just sort of like in this incredibly supercilious way just just ignores him and says, you know, I'm giving you proof. And Mike Lee says, no, you're just asserting it. And Ned Price says, well, that's the proof. And then Mike Lee is saying, that's not proof. That's just you asserting something. It doesn't make it true just because you say it. Okay. And at one point they start talking over each other, and Ned Price is just blabbering on about how this he wants to protect sources and methods of the CIA and intelligence services and bullshit like that. And Mike Lee is saying, well, you know, I heard the bullshit of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq in 2003, and that everything was fine in Afghanistan in 2020, 21. And here we are. So you're going to have to show me some proof. And of course, Ned Price doesn't show him any proof, but he acts in this incredibly condescending way, this so supercilious and looking down on him kind of way, as if he knows better. And of course, he doesn't know better. He's just an idiot. But the thing is, he's a powerful idiot. He's the spokesman for the State Department, and you know he doesn't have any proof of anything. He's just making shit up. I mean, he could say that, you know, Santa Claus is going to invade Mars tomorrow, and you know it's the same level of proof that he's giving. He's just asserting it. Okay. And so I wanted to show you that video and ran 7 minutes, and I thought it was very amusing. But unfortunately, the audio is you guys aren't hearing it, so I'm not going to run it, unfortunately, because it was really cool. It was really cool because, you know, you watch this guy, Ned Price, and I suggest you look it up on YouTube. Unfortunately, I didn't prepare it. I didn't think that you guys would not be able to hear it, and so I don't have a link to the YouTube video. But it's very easy. Just look up Ned Price briefing or Ned Price Mike Lee exchange. Mike Lee, it's just a simple name, Lee, and Ned Price. Price is in the price of something, and it's a very interesting exchange. It lasts 7 minutes, and the arrogance of the guy, the arrogance of Ned Price, even though what Mike Lee is asking, that is proof. And it could be redacted proof and all the rest of it. That's perfectly fine. And you know, you want to protect sources and methods. That's perfectly fine. But you have to show something. And Ned Price doesn't. He just says, take my word for it, basically. And when Mike Lee presses him, he just looks at him with this incredibly condescending look, like, I mean, like, oh man, it's like, I mean, you really want to just slap him, just bitch slap the guy, right? It's really just okay. So there's that I wanted to throw out there as an example of that arrogance of these people. Now, here is another bit of evidence as to the arrogance of these people. And let me just minimize myself so you guys can read this properly. Okay, this comes from Reuters. It's a snippet of a meeting that took place between Liz Truss, the British Foreign Secretary, and Sergei Lavrov, the Foreign Minister of Russia. They met a couple of days ago in Moscow, and they, Liz Truss doesn't listen to anything that Lavrov was saying. And at one point, according to Reuters, Russia's Kommersant newspaper quoted two diplomatic sources as saying that during their closed door meeting on Thursday, Lavrov asked Truss if she recognized Russian sovereignty over Rostov and Voronezh, two regions in the south of the country where Russia has been building up its forces. Kommersant said Truss replied that Britain would never recognize them as Russian and had to be corrected by her ambassador. Okay, to clue you into what this means, imagine China was throwing a fit, saying that the United States planned to invade Mexico, and the American Secretary of State said to his Chinese counterpart as they met in Washington, he said, "Do you agree that it's justified for American forces to be in Texas and New Mexico?" And the Chinese representative said to the U.S. Secretary, said, "We will never accept American troops in Texas and New Mexico." And the Chinese diplomat had to be corrected and told, well, Texas and New Mexico are part of the United States. They're not actually part of Mexico. See, I mean, that's the level here that we're talking about. Okay, the level of fucking ignorance, of arrogance, and how on earth is this woman, Liz Truss, who has never held a foreign policy position, how the fuck did she wind up being a foreign secretary for the British? How the fuck did that happen? Because she's a fucking moron, number one. I mean, this quote just shows it to you. And number two, she has no experience. I mean, it's bad enough that she's stupid, but there are some people like von Ribbentrop, Hitler's foreign minister, who was kind of like a fucking idiot, but at least had experience, and he spoke multiple languages and knew what the fuck he was doing and talking about when he talked to foreign dignitaries. You know, I mean, Hitler was the actual brains behind Ribbentrop insofar as executing policy and formulating policy. But Ribbentrop, he wasn't totally like fucking brain dead. This woman is. She's uneducated and stupid. And she's in charge of British foreign policy. And she's going to Russia to tell the Russians what's what. And she doesn't know the first thing about the basic geography of the place. And by the way, Rostov and Voronezh are like the equivalent of, say, Sheffield and Manchester in the United Kingdom, or say cities like Dallas and I don't know, Miami. I mean, they're not the top tier cities. I mean, in the U.S., if you say that the top tier cities are, New York, Washington, L.A., and Chicago, yeah, Rostov and Voronezh are second tier cities, right? Like Miami or Dallas or something like that. I mean, no disrespect to anybody coming from those cities, but you see what I'm saying? See, anybody with even a little bit of basic grasp of the geography would know this fucking shit. But this woman, she is a 46-year-old woman, a cabinet minister. She doesn't know the first thing about this very important country that we are having a very serious crisis with, or the British at least are having a very serious crisis with. See? And that level of arrogance and ignorance. And see, it's almost a feature, not a bug. Okay? And so let me get to it. Let me get to the presentation proper, and let me, phase out my face so you guys can look at the thing. Okay, so you guys saw, well, you didn't see the Ned Price video, but you get the gist of it. Arrogance and just bullshit. Just bullshit. Just talking your way through it. And Liz Truss, Ned Price, I told you a little bit of his bio. Liz Truss, it's not really important, but basically, she went to Oxford, the best university, the Harvard of the UK. And she went through the political youth camp and all that. She was originally a liberal Democrat. She changed to the Conservative Party in 1996 when she was 20 years old. She joined the Conservative Party at that time, and there's the vibe that she joined it because she was an opportunist because her family was actually left of center, left of the Labor Party. Okay, both her parents. In fact, her father was so left wing that he refused to ever campaign for her. Okay, which kind of embarrassing, but okay, fine. But the woman grew up red, and now she's a fucking conservative. But you see the opportunism, that's the thing about our elites. Okay, so let's take a step back. See, to understand our elites, we have to understand how they are educated, and you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose of education in theory, at any rate? Why do we learn shit? Why do we go and get an education? What's the reason for it? There has to be a valid reason, right? Everybody says, "Oh, education is so great." Yeah, but why? Hmm? Always ask why. If somebody says, "Oh, this is great," okay, ask why. Why is it so great? Why specifically? Well, the purpose of education is to teach information so as to shorten the learning curve of capable people, thereby allowing them to devote more working years to the actual profession. And let's take welding school. I mean, welding school, it's a craft. It's quite difficult. I mean, surprisingly difficult. I've welded a few times, and Jesus Christ, my welds came out awful. Okay, because it's not as simple as it seems. It's a real craft, and you go to welding school because in welding school you are taught the shortcuts to get better at it. Because see, you can start welding without any kind of instruction and slowly and painfully get better. But you go to welding school and they're going to give you these exercises. One of the typical exercises is they make you do little loops, okay, with first a pen and then with like a welding stick, okay, and slowly doing these loops because that's the motion you have to do in order to get like these nice and even welds, right? And so all of these little tasks that you're taught in welding school, that you go there for 6 months, a year, and you're going to learn these exercises. You're going to do these exercises and learn these little techniques that will shorten the learning curve. And in 1 year in welding school, you will learn all of the tricks of the trade that would have taken you perhaps 2, 3, or 4 years. And so that way, instead of wasting 2, 3, 4 years getting good, you just waste 1 year and you get it all distilled quickly, efficiently. It's shoved into your brain. You learn it. And in a year's time, you've mastered the craft that would have taken you 4 years to master on your own. So that's perfectly reasonable, right? That's the ideal of education. Because nobody's saying that you can't learn on your own. A lot of people have fallen into this belief that you cannot learn unless you go to university, and experts only exist when they come out of your university. No, that's a lie. You can be an expert at something never having studied it formally at some university or educational establishment. For instance, the videos that I make for YouTube, I think I've gotten pretty fucking good at them, right? Did I go someplace to learn to do that shit? No, I did by doing. I learned by doing, rather. And see, most things in life you learn by doing. And education is great when you want to shorten that learning curve. That's the purpose of it. But the problem is, what has become the purpose of education today in our culture? The actual purpose of education. Well, the actual purpose of education today is accreditation. You get a degree as a license to work a job. You're not there to actually learn. Nobody gives a fuck if you're actually learning anything. And in point of fact, in most universities, you do not learn anything because nobody knows what your job is going to be after you graduate. In a trade school, like where they teach you welding or carpentry or some shit like that, some manual labor, there you actually learn the techniques of the thing that you're going to do later on in life. You actually learn how to weld. You actually learn how to operate a table saw or whatnot. But in universities, you can be in a wide range of different fields. And so they don't actually teach you any craft. And at the end, what's going on is that the education system, is just to get you an accreditation. And once you realize that that's what it is, it's just the pursuit of an accreditation, you realize that what they are doing is they are selling a license to work. The university is not there to teach you. The university is there for you to pay your dues, pay your money, And after 3 years, you get a license to work. You see what it is. Think of it in those terms. And the more abstract and managerial the education, the more theoretical and divorced from reality it becomes. And this is inevitable. See, when you're teaching somebody how to weld, that's really fucking concrete. And you can't start talking about, oh, welding is racist and, it's oppressive and it's part of the patriarchy. And that doesn't fucking fly in welding school, right? Because at the end of the day, when you go to welding school, what do you want to do? You want to learn how to fucking weld. You don't want to learn about fucking racism in welding and some shit like that, or how welding is actually part of the patriarchy or whatever the fuck, right? You want to learn how to weld. But when the job is unknown and it is abstract and it's managerial, then it opens the door for all kinds of bullshit. You see? You see what happens? And of course, the schools also have incentives of never kicking out a student. Why? Because if they kick out a student, they lose that income from the student by way of tuition fees and whatnot. Yeah. So there's no incentive to push the students to actually be good, and every incentive to excuse their incompetence. See? That's what's going on in the education system in the West. You're not learning anything. Mhm. Now, what about elite liberal arts education? Okay, and here we come to the part because see, I backtrack here. In every society, there is an elite. Every society. There has never been a society that does not have an elite. Even countries that claim not to have an elite of some sort, like communist China back in the day, the Cambodians under Pol Pot and shit like that, they had an elite. Okay, and it was the Chinese Communist Party or the Cambodian Communist Party, the people around Pol Pot. Those were the elites. And in Soviet Russia, same thing. The Communist Party and within the Communist Party, there were different gradations of who were the real elite. Huh? Yeah, because that's how it is. There has always been an elite in every society. Because bottom line, some of us are more equal than others. It's as simple as that. Some of us are more capable. Some of us are just smarter. And the thing is, see, in the Enlightenment, in our society, which is a product of the Enlightenment, and in point of fact, our whole society is premised on an ideological tenet that is quite obviously false. And that tenet is that we are all equal. No, we're not. Some of us are clearly more capable than others, and some of us are fucking morons. Simple as that. Like, come on. Yeah. There are some people who can run like the wind, and other people like myself who can't run to save our lives, right? I mean, shit, if we were living in the savannah, a lion would have eaten me years ago, decades ago, okay? Because I can't run and I can't see. I would have been gotten eaten. But in our current contemporary society, see, that doesn't really matter. Other things matter more. But it points to the fact that we are all different. We are not equal, okay? That's one of the great lies of our society. But be that as it may, we have elites. We always will have elites. And so we need to pay attention to them to understand whether the elites that we have are actually people who are going to be capable of leading the rest of the country or the rest of our civilization, rather, in a good and healthy direction. And the answer is quite obviously no, not currently at any rate. And we see these two people, and that's why I wanted to bring up Ned Price video and the Liz Truss gaffe, because it shows that these fucking people are fucking morons. And they're all fucking morons. And the thing that drives me up the wall is so many people who are not elite, who are middle class, and some of them are lower middle class, and quite frankly, on the IQ bell curve, they're on the low end. Okay, they're below the mean. And sometimes they're below the mean by one standard deviation of the norm, and sometimes two. And they're fucking idiots. And they claim that it's all part of the plan and the Illuminati and it's a big conspiracy and all this bullshit. And I'm here to tell you, man, as a former member of the elite who was raised in this whole environment, I can tell you, these people don't have a fucking plan. They don't. They're making it up as they go along. It's as simple as that. Because they're fucking morons. Intelligent, but their intelligence has been misapplied. And it's because of their educational system. See, because an elite liberal arts education system is supposed to teach people, elite students, how to think for themselves. And for a while, I would argue between the, I would say the 19th century and the early 20th century, roughly. And I think that that sort of ended right after the Second World War with the GI Bill, and a lot of people started going to Ivy League universities and Oxbridge in the United Kingdom just to get the accreditation so they'd get a good job. Okay. They didn't really care about learning how to think and how to teach themselves because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to make money and have a successful life. And so people forgot the original purpose of an elite liberal art education. Okay. It's supposed to teach students, elite students, how to teach themselves, how they can learn anything on their own. That's the purpose of it, but that's no longer the case. And in point of fact, at this time, elite education in the Western democracies is propagandistic and ideological. It is teaching an ideology. Ideology is critical race theory. People call it that as a shorthand, but it's a little more subtle than that. It's essentially leftism. And what's interesting is that it teaches students to dismiss any view that is not that view. And that's an ideology, see? Because a truly open minded person, a person who is intellectually confident, is willing to entertain any idea and to consider it and see if it's a valid idea or not. And sometimes, many times, what one would ordinarily consider an invalid idea on closer inspection turns out to have a lot of very valid points. I mean, there is a reason that a lot of different ideologies, for instance, Nazism, was popular because it had a lot of points that people hate to admit it, but a lot of valid points, a lot of points that made a lot of sense to a lot of people. See? And so, yeah, but the thing is, the liberal arts education today, it's propagandistic, it's ideological, it dismisses anything that differs from what is being taught in these universities. And the critical race theory, you can say that that's basically the ideology because in rough form, that is essentially correct. But what's going on is that, see, it's not so much that they're teaching an ideology, it's that they are teaching the elite students not to think for themselves and to dismiss any other idea. That's the problem. That's the real problem. See? Because you saw, well, you didn't see it, but take my word for it. The Ned Price video, right? See, Ned Price, when Mike Lee, the journalist, is asking this very reasonable thing, show me proof. Ned Price is dismissing him. And you know, he goes so far, I forgot to mention this part. This is the best part. He goes so far as to say that if you, he says to Ned Price, to Mike Lee, excuse me, Ned Price, the spokesman for the State Department, says to Mike Lee, the journalist, that if you're going to take comfort from Russian propaganda, he says that. And Mike Lee cuts him off and says, wait, I'm not taking comfort from Russian propaganda. I just want to know proof. And Ned Price just insists, no, well, no, if you want to, take comfort from Russian propaganda, I don't know what to say to you. That is not an argument of any sort. That's a way to dismiss an uncomfortable question. And see, that's what's being taught in these universities. And for reasons that are way too long to explain in this video, at this time, Western universities, especially the elite universities, they have become completely ideological and propagandistic, and they do not teach the students how to argue and combat a negative idea or an idea that they disagree with logic and reason. All they can do is just attack it and dismiss it. And that's what Ned Price did in that video that unfortunately I couldn't show you. But like I said, go look it up on YouTube. It's around. There are lots of mirrors of it all over the place because it was quite famous. Okay. Because it was just so ridiculous. It was on Tucker Carlson. He did a segment on it and it was very amusing, but deeply troubling. Okay. Because it is. Now, let's see. Um, as I said, well, I said in a different way, but it says here on my outline that people who are ideological do not know how to think critically. This is a key issue. See, when you are taught an ideology, you don't know how to argue because ultimately an ideology depends on you accepting it without question. See, and more often than not, a fragile ideology like critical race theory, like all this leftism bullshit, See, this fragile ideology, it cannot stand up to scrutiny. And so they go out of their way to make sure that the students, the acolytes, do not question it. And since they don't question their own ideology, they don't know how to question anything else that comes their way. They don't know how to argue with anybody, you see? And so they have lost the critical faculty. And this is across the board in elite institutions. And I saw this starting in the early 90s. I saw it. And the tragedy was that at that time, I was at Dartmouth and I argued about this. I argued about the bullshit that they were teaching. And the students, the other students, it wasn't the teachers, it was the other students, they would say, oh, just shut up already. Let's just get it over with. See? It was the students who didn't want to confront the bullshit because they recognized it, but they didn't want to bother. Okay. And that's the thing that was the most shocking. Anyway, um, to go on, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. I'm going to tell you more about my experiences at Dartmouth because they affected me deeply for various reasons. And now I'm seeing the results of it. Okay. The results of the intellectual apathy that I saw at elite universities. But anyway, um, people who are ideological do not know how to think critically. Therefore, they are unprepared for a complex world. Because when you are a simple welder or a simple carpenter, what do? You have a trade and you get hired by people who want you to weld something or who want you to build something made out of wood, and you do it for them and you charge them money and they pay you and you do the work, and that's that. It's very simple in that regard. But when you get higher up on the totem pole, higher up in the social classes, when you become more elite, well, things become a lot more complicated and much more complex. And the motivations are not so straightforward. Somebody who wants to hire you to weld something, just wants some machinery to work or whatever. That's basically it. Somebody hires you to build them some, I don't know, like a dining room table or some shit like that. It's pretty fucking straightforward, right? But sometimes you get hired by a public relations firm because you're higher up on the totem pole and you're good at communicating and shit like that. And so they want you to put out some sort of point of view, some sort of ad that will convince people. And then the question becomes, well, are you going to do it? Because maybe you're trying to convince people to take something that is really bad for them, but will make the company a lot of money. You see my point? It becomes much more complex the higher up you go in the totem pole. And so your activities become much more morally complex, not so straightforward. See? And the students are being deliberately dumbed down. They're not learning how to think critically or how to how to figure shit out, basically. See, there's another problem too with the elite institutions, that the path to success has become incredibly narrow. Okay, now in like one of the Indiana Jones movies, I think the third one. Sorry about that noise. Let me just turn it off. It's my phone. Somebody is trying to reach me, and it's not important at this time. Anyway, um, can you guys hear me, by the way? Hit me with a +1 just to make sure, because all of a sudden I got all paranoid because I don't want to go to my phone, but somebody's like, hang on a second, let me just check this real fucking quick just to make sure that it's not like people telling me that, they can't hear me or some shit like that. Okay. No, it's not. Okay. Great. Thanks so much, guys. Sorry about that interruption, but shit, I lost my train of thought. Man, I fucking hate when that happens when you're like in your groove and something is said and just throws you off and like, oh, okay. Anyway, um what I was mentioning about the Indiana Jones movie, I think it was the third one, that at one point he has to cross some chasm and there's a bridge that is sort of like invisible or some shit like that. It's not really important, but the important thing is that he has to cross some chasm and the path is very, very narrow. Okay, and he's to be very, very careful as he crosses it. See, that's the problem with elite education. You have to be very careful to try to get into elite educational establishments. It's not enough to get the grades or the test scores. You got to do a lot of activities and you have to make sure that you never get into any kind of disciplinary trouble. And so you have all of this pressure and the path to success is extremely narrow and you only get the one shot. And so what happens is that, see, what a person, let me put it this way, a person who's intellectually curious, who's got a lot of vitality to him, a young person, somebody who's 15, 17, something like that, they're going to fuck up. They're going to do all kinds of stupid shit because it's natural. And the more capable people will tend to fuck up more. And that's actually a good thing, because these kids who fuck up more when they're like, 13, 15, 17, 19, right? These kids who fuck up more are going to learn from their fuck ups. And yeah, they'll fuck up and, I don't know, crash a car or do something stupid or whatever the fuck, right? But long term, it'll make them better adults, more capable adults. I mean, I think to myself, I didn't get very good grades and stuff like that in high school and stuff. And it was only later that I got my shit together, you know? And a lot of the fuck ups that I did when I was a teenager, they helped me a lot as I got older. They actually helped me a lot to avoid big mistakes later on. See? I mean, like all the partying and the boozing and drugs and shit like that when I was a teenager. Later on, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna go down that path, man. I was already there. I did it already. I did my drugs. I did my booze when I was a teenager. I'm not gonna fuck it up now as a 30-something-year-old man or a 20-something-year-old man, and much less 40-something or 50-something. You see what I'm saying? The early fuck ups are sort of like inoculations against later fuck ups. You see what I'm saying? But the thing is, see, if you fuck up as a teenager, you aren't going to be able to get into these elite institutions. See, one little slip up and you're out. And that's a problem. That's a serious problem. Because on the one hand, the most capable people, the people who are actually going to be decent moral people as adults, they get disqualified by some fuck up when they're a kid. See? And on the other hand, the people who do get into these elite universities and institutions, they have a series of problems that are very, very dangerous. And let's get into them right now. The students at elite universities that have been whittled down to a certain type, and that type is the following. They're extremely intelligent and ambitious. Of course, I mean, you got to be smart and you got to be ambitious to want to get into like Harvard or Oxford, right? You can't be a fucking idiot. And you got to want it. You got to be very ambitious, because it's not enough to be smart. You got to work your fucking ass off to get it. And being smart is only half the equation. You got to work like a fucking demon to get into these fucking schools, right? And so these people, in order to get into these schools, they have to follow the example of other successful applicants. So they have to be extremely compliant. They have to be rule followers, people who follow the rules. And the elite institutions, because only a certain kind of person gets in. Oh, yeah, it varies a little bit year over year, but it's basically just a one kind of student, right? The intelligent, ambitious kids who want to get into that elite school, they have to do the same fucking thing. And so they follow the rules. They become very good at following rules, very compliant. And they are extremely risk averse. They're not going to do something that will fuck up their opportunities, because they spend too much time and effort trying to get into Harvard or Yale or Princeton or wherever the fuck. See? So they're going to be extremely risk averse, and they're only going to do that which they know, not think, not hope, but they know will help them advance in their ambitions. Okay? Now, a risk averse person, that's good for the insurance business, but it's horrible in most other lines of work. See? But that's the kind of student that gets into elite universities, the risk averse student. The student that gets into elite universities is very unwilling to go against the consensus. If he recognizes the consensus, he'll follow along. And it's going to be almost like lemming like. Because, see, he doesn't get any benefit from sticking out, but he gets every benefit from following along, following the trend of everybody else. You see? And sticking out and doing what he really wants, no, it doesn't help at all. Okay? And here's something interesting about this, going along with the consensus. They're even oblivious to ridiculousness. They won't point it out. And this happened to me at Dartmouth several times. I remember clearly in September of 1992, it's going on 30 years ago. I was in this class on the origins of the novel. Because at the time, I was thinking of getting a double major in philosophy and English. And eventually, I wound up getting a double major in philosophy and history and just a minor in English. And this English class, I think it was English 52, with this woman. I remember her, if the name might pop up, McKay, something like that. Anyway, the thing is, see, she was just bullshitting. She was just blue skying and talking about Moll Flanders and other early novels and just making shit up. And I could tell. I mean, I can tell when somebody's just bullshitting and when somebody's actually teaching something. I mean, like for instance, in this presentation that I'm giving you right now, I've actually thought about this shit. I've got like a fucking outline. You're fucking seeing it, right? And so I actually have like a direction and a point of where I'm going. The actual words that I say, I'm making them up as I go along. I haven't written out a script for this whole fucking presentation, right? But I more or less know what the fuck I'm saying. I more or less have a fucking point. But, in this class back in 92, the teacher, the professor, a full professor, by the way, tenured, she was just bullshitting. I mean, I could tell. And I could tell that sometimes just some random event in the classroom, like a bird flew by the window or whatever the fuck, would launch her into a completely random direction. And by the way, she wasn't black. She was a white woman from Yale, I think she was. PhD, the whole nine yards, published poet, all this good shit. But she was just bullshitting, man. No fucking clue as to where she was going. And I pointed this out. And the thing that drove me nuts, the thing that really just chapped my ass, is that everybody else knew it. Hey, because all the other kids are smart. They're not fucking stupid. They could tell when somebody's on the ball and when they're, making it up as they go along. And they all knew that she was making it up as she was going along. And you know what they all said? They said, just shut up and just like sit through the fucking thing so we get the participation grade and just leave it at that. You see? You see the tragedy? And this was back 30 years ago, man. It only got worse since then. Of people just listening and tolerating bullshit and not saying fucking thing. Because it didn't pay them. It didn't pay them to object to any of this bullshit. Okay? Now, another quality that these students have is they're extremely individualistic. See? Because what happens is inevitable. All ambitious people tend to be individualistic. Ambitious people want to succeed. They want to succeed more than the next guy. And this inevitably leads to them being much more individualistic, much more separated from the pack. Because the pack, they want to be all together. But the guy who's very ambitious, he doesn't want to be with a pack. He wants to break away. He tends to be very individualistic, and therefore he has little or no conception of belonging to something greater than himself. Of course not. See? I mean, like in my own case, I remember very clearly when I went to university, to Dartmouth, I was hoping that I would find a group of people like me who were very smart, very interested in intellectual topics, discussing ideas. I was very interested in finding that group of people. I did not find them at all. See, even though there were a lot of people who were very, very smart. I mean, all of them, I'd say, were very smart, except the affirmative action babies. The affirmative action babies, the minority students, they were all fucking morons. They were all of them. And I say this, the African American students were fucking morons. And the Latino students, they were all fucking morons. The only Latino students who weren't stupid, who were actually very, very smart, were the international Latino students, which is the group I hung out with. Those fuckers were very, very smart, but they were all like upper class kids, really rich kids, that kind of thing. But all the minority students are fucking morons if they were Latino or African American. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound racist, but that's the truth. I mean, shit, it was even admitted to me by an African American student while I was at Dartmouth that they knew that they were fucking stupid. Yeah, because they didn't deserve to be there. They were only there because of the color of their skin or because their last name was Martinez or whatever the fuck, right? The Asian kids, the Jewish kids, the white kids, they were all smart, especially the Asian kids, because to get into Dartmouth, even at that time, it wasn't enough for you to get the right scores and the right SATs if you were Asian. You had to be even better than that, okay? And so the Asians who were at Dartmouth were top tier. I mean, they were like fucking 1,600 on their SAT scores, and they were like concert pianists and shit, right? And on top of that, they were getting like engineering degrees or some monstrosity like that. They were all kinds of brainiac, right? because that's the way the thing was. But anyway, the point. Um, the kids, they were always looking out for themselves. They didn't care about others. And there was no effort by the universities, and there still wasn't, to create any kind of sense of collective security among these students. They're all on their own. Okay. Now, the other thing that happens with these elite students is that they're extremely open to corruption. And that's something that's not obvious, but they are. See? Now, you think of corruption as like, somebody slipping a $20 bill to a cop that stops you or some shit like that. No, no, no. There's all kinds of different kinds of corruptions. There's the obvious kind of slipping, $100 to a cop, but there's the less subtle kind, the more subtle kind rather, of like, for instance, the CEO of a company resigning and moving into the position as chairman of the government regulatory agency that supervises his old company. You see what I mean? And you see how corrupt that is? And that happens, by the way. There's this funny meme that shows these people who are like board of directors of Pfizer, board of directors of Moderna and Johnson Johnson, and they were all former government functionaries or later became government functionaries regulating the very industry that they come from. That kind of corruption, it's taught to them, it's bred into them. They are selected for it. It's creepy and it's true. Okay. And of course, the key issue is that all of these elite students, they don't have any education in the real world whatsoever. No real world experience at all in anything. Because what's going on with these elite institutions, as I explained before, is that, see, in theory, you want to educate somebody formally in a university or whatever kind of academic environment, so it becomes a shortcut. That's the whole purpose of it. Like I said in the example with welding school, you go to welding school, so instead of taking 3 or 4 years to learn your craft, you learn all the craft in 1 year. But with elites, see, what's happened is that that was the original idea, to teach students and teach them how to think so that they could go into the real world and quickly accede to a higher level because they were smart enough to learn. But what's happened is that these people have become completely divorced from reality. All they know, their only reality, is academia. And academia has become full of bullshit. And it's been full of bullshit for quite some time. Like I said, back 30 years ago, it was all bullshit. Now it's worse than ever, right? It's all ideological, propagandistic bullshit. It's all based on narrative of writing shit, making shit up, and convincing other people that you are telling the truth, even though what you're saying is just fucking made up. But that's what they're being taught. That all that matters is the narrative. What narrative are you trying to convey? Not the reality of what you are trying to convey. See? And that's what's going on with these young people and not so young people. These people like Ned Price, like Liz Truss, who are running shit. They think that if they tell a story enough times and the story is convincing enough, then it becomes the truth, that it becomes reality somehow. That somehow the narrative that they concoct will magic itself into reality. You see what's going on? I mean, I don't know if I'm making my point clearly enough. Hit me with a lot of plus ones, or this was from before. Oh, this was from before. If you guys understand what I'm saying, hit me with a plus one right now, because it's very important that you understand this this issue of how these elite students are taught to concoct these narratives as a replacement to reality. Because in these academic environments, see, it works. Because these academic environments, Oxford, Cambridge, Dartmouth, University of Chicago, Stanford, they are all in these bubbles of privilege, of richness, purchased by all those student loans. And so in these bubbles, you can say any odd crazy thing about the real world, and who's going to say otherwise? You're living in a fucking fantasy land. And so, of course, you say any crazy ass shit about reality, and people are going to say, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. But it's completely divorced from reality. But see, since everybody there is living in this unreal fantasy land, I mean, anybody ever been to Stanford or Hanover up in New Hampshire for Dartmouth College, or I don't know, Chapel Hill for Duke or whatever, they'll tell you that those towns, man, New Haven, well, New Haven's a shithole except for Yale, but um, all those towns, all those places, they're beautiful, they're magical because of all the money coming in from the university. And so it's like this paradise. And in this paradise, you can make up any old shit, any crazy ass shit, and who's going to say otherwise? See? And so that's what happens. All these people, they go out into the real world, and all they know how to do is, tell narratives. They're telling fairy tales, divorced from reality. Okay. Okay. So elite institutions, I'm talking governments and corporations now. Okay. They've outsourced their apprenticeships to elite universities. And this is a truism. See, in the 19th century and before, yeah, you wanted to be a lawyer, right? Well, you finished your basic education and you went to work for a law firm. You didn't go to university and then law school. You went straight to a law firm and you learned by doing. And you were there as an apprentice to some other lawyer, right? And same with medical school, same with every fucking profession. Okay, you had to apprentice, and you apprenticed by working for somebody with more experience than you in whatsoever the craft might have been. I mean, we're typically, when we discuss apprenticeships, we always think of it as like, blacksmithing and carpentry and shit like that. But it was also medicine, it was also law, it was also all the other brain occupations, journalism and whatnot. Well, journalism has always been like disreputable. It's only been like starting in the 70s and 80s that journalism became a thing, and now we have this shit. But I'll get to that in a minute. The point, see, the elite institutions, the government, and the corporations, they found it more practical that instead of them spending money to teach somebody by way of an apprenticeship how to work in the government or work in whatever corporation or company or industry or whatever, they would outsource it to the universities. They would outsource it to the universities, and the universities did two tasks basically. First of all, it was a screening process. See, because the universities would screen out the people necessary to get to the elite level, right? I mean, by the admissions process, right there, that's the screening process. The admissions process at universities is basically saying these people can come to my university and get my degree, and these people cannot. And the fact is, the graduation rate of the elite university is something like 97%. Once you're in, you're going to graduate one way or the other. I mean, these fuckers, and I saw this 30 years ago, it's even worse today. These fuckers, if you start failing your classes and shit like that, they assign like a psychologist to you and all kinds of assistants to make sure that you graduate because they assume that it's them, not you. And which is stupid because, of course, a lot of times you're a lazy bum and you're not going to classes and not doing the work. And of course, you're going to fail out, but they don't allow that to happen. Okay. So that's why you have 97% graduation rate from all these Ivy League institutions. See? And so, anyway, the point they screen you with the admissions process. And then for 4 years, you just slave away to get the degree, and you didn't even have to slave away that bad. It's pretty easy, and you have a hell of a lot of fun during that time. It's like summer camp, right? And after 4 years, you get your BA, and you do another 2 years or 3 years, depending on the postgrad work you're doing. You want to be a lawyer, say you got to do 3 years, and again, same fucking deal. You're not going to flunk out, and by the end of it, you're a lawyer. 7 years of education, zero experience whatsoever. 7 years of education, you're at least 25, probably closer to 27 or something like that, because maybe you took a couple of years off to travel around the world and whatnot. And you go to work in your first job at 27, your first professional job at 27. You see? You see how bad that is? Because you've spent, you know, uh, you're at 27 and you've never had like a real job with real responsibilities. I mean, at most, you were flipping burgers in high school, right? And that was your biggest job. And in university, I mean, I had university jobs. I'm sure most of you have as well. Most of them are menial. You're working at the dining hall or catering service. That's what I did. The best job, I mean, the most quote unquote prestigious job I had at university at Dartmouth was working at tech support in the humanities department, right? Helping professors with their computing problems. And I quit because I discovered that washing dishes at the business school paid shitloads more. That's why I quit. No other reason, because prestigious as though it was, I needed money, and it wasn't really prestigious. I mean, who was I going to impress? Nobody, right? So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that, see, they graduate with all this accreditation and no experience. Okay. And the thing too is that the government and the corporations especially, they put the universities on a scale of prestige. At the very top are the typical, the usual suspects, the Ivy League schools and Oxbridge. Those are at the top. Okay. Like, I went to Dartmouth, and Dartmouth is one of the Ivy League schools. At the time, it was ranked number 7 in the United States, and I think it was ranked number 15 worldwide at the time. And I'll tell you that I graduated with honors, but I was a fairly mediocre student. I was no big deal. I got the possibility of a job at Goldman Sachs. I had the possibility of getting a PhD in Russian history at Princeton. And I had the possibility of going to law school and going to Yale. I'd get the recommendations for all those. I had them. And all I needed to do, for the Goldman Sachs job, all I had to do was just move to New York, and I had it. And all I had to do to get into Yale Law was to get a good score on the LSAT. And I actually took an LSAT facsimile, and I got the scores that it would need to. So if, like, on a real test, I didn't even prepare. So for like a real test, I would have gotten in. And I think I needed to do a GRE to a GRE test to, I think it was called GRE. I forget the name of it actually, now that I think about it. Isn't GRE the high school equivalency? I forgot. It doesn't matter. I had to take some fucking test, standardized test. All these are fucking standardized, right? And I'd be able to get my PhD in Russian history. And to get the PhD in Russian history, by the way, what really mattered was not the test score. It was really the recommendation of your professor. And I had that in the bag. And so a fairly mediocre student such as myself had access to all these opportunities just by virtue of having gone to Dartmouth. Because that's a fact. Because what happens is that when you are graduating from elite school, you are automatically assigned a slot, okay, based on the prestige of the school. And so a institution, a government, another graduate school, whatever, they will take you more seriously if you went to that school. And they'll just automatically think that you're higher up, even if you're a fucking idiot, or, like in my case, just a mediocre student. I'm sure there were more capable people than me at less prestigious schools that would have blown my ass away, in law school or graduate school in Russian history or at Goldman Sachs. They would have blown me the fuck away. But, they went to a second tier school or third tier school. And they might have had all the brains in the world, but just because of the name of the school, that slotted them. Because the governments and the corporations have decided that if you go to these good schools, then you get higher up. But if you don't go to these good schools, then you don't. See? I mean, like this guy, Ned Price, right? He went to Georgetown, and Georgetown is like a second tier school, except the foreign service school that they have, which is sort of kind of like dedicated, which makes a lot of sense. Georgetown is in Washington, D.C., for those of you who don't know. And so graduates of the Georgetown Diplomatic School, they automatically have an in at high level government offices, CIA, State Department, Department of Defense, right? And the State Department runs the Foreign Service, and so you get assigned to embassies and shit like that. But the point is that, see, that was exceptional. All the others are basically graded or ranked according to the U.S. News and World Report ranking of universities in the United States. That's how it's done, because the corporations and the government have outsourced the apprenticeship to these universities. These universities select the people who are going to join the companies, the high level companies, the Googles and whatnot. You see? And so whoever controls the admissions in the universities controls who's going to be a leader later on in the corporations and the government. And so everybody says, well, why is all the companies going woke and shit? Well, because the people controlling admissions in these elite universities back in the day, they were woke leftists. And so they only admitted woke leftists, or they only admitted those who pretended to be woke leftists. Because, like I said before, these people in the previous slide, I said they're extremely intelligent, extremely ambitious, extremely compliant. They follow the rules, and they're unwilling to go against the consensus. If they see the consensus is that everybody believes in this nonsense of critical race theory, they're going to say the same thing. They're like, yeah, white privilege sucks, down with the patriarchy and all that bullshit, right? They're going to say it, and they're not going to make waves. They're not going to say that it's ridiculous, because from their point of view, they want to get ahead. So if they have to spout this bullshit to get ahead, they'll spout it because they don't believe in anything. The only thing they believe in is their own advancement. See? And you see how this is working. And see, you get here to the corporations and the universities, the corporations rather, and the government, the high levels of government. Because you got to understand, the government is a corporation, right? And there are people higher up on the totem pole and lower down on the totem pole. Like, for instance, you go down to the DMV, the local Department of Motor Vehicles, where you have to register your car and get your driver's license, right? Who do you think works there? The fucking bottom of the barrel, right? The people working there, I mean, they went to some no-name state school, or some fucking community college or some shit like that. And where do the people who went to the Ivy League schools go to? They go to Washington, and they're the aides to some senator or some congressman, senior congressman from Iowa, wherever the fuck, who's like some chairman of some committee and crap like that, right? They get elite jobs. But these people who get these elite jobs, way back in university, they were selected to be these lefty ideological critical race theory lunatics. So that's what's going on. That's why all these companies and the government, all this shit, they have all this craziness because it started in the universities way back when. And now we're seeing the effects of it. You see? Now, governments and corporations assume that people with degrees from elite universities know what they're doing. And they just need to learn the ropes, as it were, quote unquote. See? Now, this originally was actually true. Okay. I remember when I was in university at Dartmouth in 92, there was this kid who had graduated like a couple of years before, and he showed up in Hanover. He went to his frat, and I was hanging out there with him. And the guy had studied geography. I swear to God, geography. He'd gotten his degree in geography, and he'd gone to work for some trading firm, and he was making $250,000. And this was in 92. Okay. So $250,000 at that time is the equivalent today of $750,000. I mean, it was a shit ton of fucking money. Okay. It was like unbelievable. Do keep in mind, back in that time, your entire costs for Dartmouth, all in, was $22,000 a year. That was room, board, and tuition. Okay. 22 grand. That was the whole shebang. And this fucker was making 10 times that. So today, I think that that Dartmouth is charging like 50 or 60,000. So yeah, he was making the equivalent of 500 or 600,000 today. Okay, and he was 2 years out of university. He was trading on the Chicago commodities floor, right? That's how he was making. And yeah, he said, yeah, I didn't know fucking shit about this commodities shit. And I got there, and I spent like a month, like a crash course, learning all this shit. And after there was first month of learning to do this shit, and he showed us like the hand signals, because this was back pre-electronic where you had all this hand signaling shit. It was really fucking funny. And it took like a month to learn that shit, and then another month that I was like working on the desk of some trader. And by the third month, I was trading myself. And the fourth month, they gave me $20 million to play with. And by the first year, I was running a portfolio of $250 million. I'm like, how the fuck, man? I mean, the kind of money he's talking about. And he was real. I mean, he wasn't bullshitting. Okay. Because he had the cash. I mean, he was who he claimed to be. Okay. And he had learned on the job. Yeah. Because those were the skills that he had learned from studying fucking geography. The skills to master commodities trading at the Chicago floor. You see what I'm saying? But see, this has gone away because that guy back in 92 was telling me about this. He was like an Indian guy, right? What happened was that that guy was real fucking smart. And what he had learned insofar as geography, I mean, fuck the geography. What he had actually learned was how to think critically and how to figure shit out quickly. Okay. That was the great skill that he had. That's why he was making that kind of money. I mean, I realize this retrospectively. At the time, I was just like flabbergasted, right? But now I realize exactly what was going on. The fucker, who gives a shit if you had studied geography? What was important was that he had a brain that was fucking muscular, that could pick up anything. And he had picked up the whole issue of commodities trading in fucking 90 days, for crying out loud. And within 360 days, the fucker is trading like a quarter of a billion dollars, man. He's running a portfolio. He knows what the fuck he's doing. He's a huge fucking deal because he had the brains and his brain had been trained critically. But that's no longer the case. See, it's been decaying over the last quarter century. The kids no longer know how to think, and so they don't really learn the ropes because they don't have the skills to learn the ropes. And that's a reality that we are perceiving now. They're just ideological. They just know how to do the Excel spreadsheet or the PowerPoint presentation, but they don't know how to think. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's a fucking disaster. I talked to some friends of mine who are in consulting, and they tell me this problem all the time, that the people who are graduating now, they don't know a fucking thing. They don't know how to think. See, they only know how to spout platitudes about racism and shit like that. See, and that's a serious problem. See, higher level people are recruited from a pool of applicants with more degrees, not more experience, practical knowledge, good judgment, or any other unmeasurable metric. Yeah. And this has been going on for a long time. See, the university, excuse me, the corporations. See, suppose this. Suppose you meet two 23-year-olds, right? One went to a good high school and then went straight to a good Ivy League school. And the other got kicked out of university, bummed around for a while, and taught English as a foreign language. And here he is at 23, and he has a small little business teaching English classes, and he's got like 3 or 4 other English teachers that he farms out, and he's got this little burgeoning business. Okay, that was actually my case, by the way, at 23. Now, which one do you think is better? Now, as a man of 53, I look back and I say, yeah, the 23-year-old kid who's got like the little business, he's better than the recent college grad because he's got more gumption, he's got more brains, and yeah, it's harder to measure, but you can tell just by hearing what he's doing. He bummed around. Okay, fine. He got a lot of experience from that bumming around, and now he's running a small little English language company. Eventually, the guy is going to get bigger. He's going to be more successful. That kid is better than the kid who just went straight from the private school to the Ivy League university. He's going to have more initiative. He's going to have more drive, more brains, more practical brains. He'll be able to solve practical problems. You see? But of course, that guy who didn't go to university, who bummed around and taught English as a foreign language, and then started to hire other teachers to teach English, and started creating a little business out of it. How do you measure that? It's not easy now, is it? It takes judgment on your part to listen to these two stories and realize, oh yeah, the guy who went to like Duke University, straight from high school and just got good grades and just graduated from Duke, he's in a sense less valuable than the other guy who had some gumption and started making a little business for himself. Yeah. I mean, running an English teaching business, you got to have brains. Because I mean, it's it's teaching after all, right? And so since you can't measure it, it's not easy to measure, you discount it. And that's the problem we've been having since the invention of systems analysts, systems analytics, rather. Ever since the 1930s, when, well, you could argue that systems analysis started in the 1800s, but let's just argue for the sake of argument that it started in 1930, right? Well, ever since the advent of systems analysis, there's always been this problem of an inability to measure those things that are truly valuable, but do not have an obvious metric by which to measure them by. Mm? You can measure a lot of things. You can measure your height, your weight, whatnot. But can you measure, if somebody's lazy or hardworking? Not really. I mean, how? How do you measure it? You can't. And so systems analysis essentially says, well, if you can't measure it, then it doesn't exist. You see? And a lot of times, the most important things are those things that you cannot measure. And so what happens is that the corporations, the elite institutions, I mean, the top tier of the government and the better corporations, they hire people with observable, easy to identify metrics. Oh, you went to Harvard. Okay, that's a metric. You went to Harvard. You're a Harvard graduate. As compared to the guy who went to, the community college down the street, right? But when you have something, something equally valuable or perhaps even more valuable, but no way to measure it, you dismiss it. And that's what's happened, you see? And so many of the more valuable people of the society are dismissed because they don't fit the slot. They don't take the path that can be easily measured. And so those people who also, because of the previous issue of the very narrow path to success, they fell off that path because they were young and they had, a lot of gumption, a lot of energy and whatnot, and a lot of foolishness, and they try a lot of stupid shit, right? And so they fell off that path, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable. In fact, I would argue that a lot of times those people who kind of like fuck up and do all kinds of crazy shit when they're young, they're more capable than those people who are very docile, very compliant, who do everything that they are told to do, who jump over every obstacle. I mean, those fuck ups, well, they're fuck ups when they're young, when they're kids, but they're going to become much more valuable adults with much better judgment. And this is a key issue. To go back to Ned Price and Liz Truss, those two people, they went through every hoop. They're the product of elite institutions. They rose through the ranks of all the elite ranks, but they have no judgment. They're fools. Because ultimately, having good judgment is not an issue of IQ points or of accreditation. Having good judgment comes from experiencing the real world and failing in the real world. The fact that you fail in the real world as a youth will give you much, much, much more experience as an adult because you'll be able to draw on that failure as a youth and realize, oh, yeah, this isn't such a good idea now. It might sound like a good idea, but no, it's bad because of these reasons that correspond to things that I've experienced in the past failures that inform my present decisions and prevent me from taking the wrong decision. Because I failed back when I was a teenager, and because of that failure that I remember so vividly, now I look at a problem that is similar to it, and I know which path to take to avoid the failure. Because that's what judgment is ultimately, right? It's using your past failures, your past experience, to inform your present decisions. But if you have never taken the wrong decision because you've always been risk averse and very compliant and doing exactly what you are told to do, you never make mistakes. Ergo, you never develop any kind of judgment. And that's what's happened. The elites, the Ned Prices and Liz Trusses of the world, they never fail. They have never failed, rather. And therefore, as adults, they don't know the wise path of action. You see? You see how tragic this is? The other thing, too, that happens is that these people produced by these elite institutions, they have bad incentives, extremely bad incentives. You see, because they arise because they have degrees and accreditation. And by the way, there are different kinds of accreditation. I sort of skipped this through, but let me just backtrack a little bit. Because you think of accreditation as strictly like, you know, getting a degree from a university. It's not quite true. Like, for instance, in my own case, to give you an example that I've just discussed a little bit. When I was offered the gig at Goldman Sachs, I was told at the time that working at Goldman Sachs is not necessarily an end in itself. It's kind of like a postgraduate school of finance. See, there are lots of people who graduate from a good university and go straight to work for Goldman Sachs, and they work there for a couple of years. And it's like a postgraduate degree, it's an accreditation process. Because a lot of times people work at Goldman Sachs and realize that they don't want to work at Goldman Sachs full time, just as there are people who go to an Ivy League school and realize that they don't want to get a PhD and become a professor in an Ivy League school, right? Exact same thing. People go to, say, Goldman Sachs, or they go to McKinsey. McKinsey is a consulting firm, and it has the same function in consulting and corporate life as Goldman Sachs has insofar as Wall Street and the financial world. They're like finishing schools. And you go to McKinsey, you go to Goldman, and you work there a couple of years, and then you look for a job at some other company. And a lot of times what will happen is that at Goldman and at McKinsey and other institutions like this, big corporations like this, that soak up a lot of young people from elite universities. Every year they soak up a lot, and they expect to lose them. And the thing is, see, they expect to lose them, but maintain the relationship. So Goldman, you leave Goldman and you go to work for JP Morgan, or you leave to work for, I don't know, the finance department at Google, or you leave to work for wherever the fuck. And that relationship with Goldman continues. See? And they expect it to continue, and they make the effort. Goldman makes the effort to continue to have that relationship with you, even though you're working at some other company. You might even wind up working for their competition, their direct competition. But that's okay, because there's that relationship. And the idea becomes that we're all in it together. You see? The same with McKinsey. And same with different other institutions, Booz Allen and shit like that. They all have this sense of networking, of spreading out, okay? And they're all plugged in. And so these initial institutions that soak up all these graduates become the finishing schools that disperse them out into the corporate environment. See? And so that becomes like an accreditation process. If you say to somebody in finance, okay, you're talking, just say for the sake of argument that you're talking to, I don't know, you're talking to some corporate guy, and some recruiter for a big corporation. You don't know which one it is. They're looking to hire a CFO, a chief financial officer, and so you tell them, well, I went to an Ivy League school. I got a degree in economics, specialized in finance, and then I did 2 years at Goldman Sachs. And then I did another year, another 3 years rather, at risk management at Google Financial, or GM Financials, right? Say that, and then I was offered the opportunity for a year at the World Bank as an economic analyst. Very academic and very challenging, but not for me. I really enjoyed it. Great environment, but the World Bank is a little bit, a little bit too esoteric. I need to get my hands dirty in a real company. That's what you say in your interview. And so the guy knows exactly who you are. You've gotten through all the accreditation processes. See, you got the Ivy League degree. You got the Goldman Sachs for a couple of years. You got the World Bank tenure at the midpoint of your career. Yeah, you're semi-heavyweight. You're a middleweight going up to heavyweight. And so he'll offer you the gig as CFO of this medium-sized company, like Pepperidge Farms. That's a medium-sized company, for instance. And yeah, they'll say, I'm just making it up, okay? I have no fucking idea about Pepperidge Farm, but just to name brand recognition. You get offered the job of chief financial officer at Pepperidge Farm, baked goods. Pepperidge Farm is a national brand that does English muffins and cookies and shit like that. Okay, so you work for them as a CFO. at this mid-tier company. And that becomes another accreditation. And they just become slots on your resume. You see? And so you have this ping-ponging of being in the private sector and being in these government organizations or these non-government organizations that have a lot of weight, like the World Bank or like, Goldman, which is a private company, of course, but it's a special kind of company that signals out to the wider world that you're elite. See? And that's what's going on. It's accreditation, but it's not strictly formal. It's not just the universities, is what I'm trying to say. There are other kinds of accreditation. Okay. And so you rise because of your degrees and your accreditation from these elite institutions, but you don't rise because of practical on the ground knowledge. Your success comes from the accreditation at the elite institutions, not from your good decision making. And this is the fucking tragedy, because you are rising not because you're capable and you made the wise choices in the different jobs that you had. No, you're rising because you got the accreditation, the lines on your resume. Because what's happening in a way, if you think about it, is that your life is being commodified. You have certain slots on your resume, certain lines on your resume, and that indicates a certain value in the marketplace. And it's a fungible value because there are other guys who are going to have pretty much the same lines on their resume as you. Okay. And so what happens is that some company will say to their headhunter firm, their talent firm, the firm that goes out there, their consulting firm that goes out there and finds them a person for the job that they have. They say, look, we want a guy who's Ivy League, 2 years Goldman, a few years in a private sector, hopefully 1 year at the IMF or the World Bank to get some economics background, right? Macroeconomic background, and we want him here, to run our finance department. Mhm. And so you have become commodified. You see, and you are a certain commodity. It's like a metal of a certain purity with a certain number of different metals. A metal alloy. Put it like that. You're a certain metal alloy that has a certain particular mix of iron and lead and gold and whatever the fuck. You see? And the company is looking for that particular alloy. You see? And you become commodified. Your value is not how good you are. Your value is in your accreditation. And that's what's going on with the elites. They themselves, as individuals, the things that they have done as individuals, the decisions they have made do not matter. All that matters is their accreditation and them filling a slot. You see? And it's horrifying if you think about it. Anyway, because the person, you rise because of your accreditation and not your good decision making, you have no incentive to make better decisions. Of course not, because a good decision is not going to affect your future success. In fact, what's the decision you're going to make? You're going to make the consensus decision. You're never going to go out on a limb. You'd be insane to do so. You're only going to make the decision that everybody agrees with. It could be a horrible decision, but you're not going to make an original decision that's actually good, because you're not being paid to make original decisions. You're being paid for your accreditation. Your job is not to make wise decision. Your job is just to fill a slot. And so your decision doesn't matter. And ultimately, your decision, you are going to decide to do just like everybody else. When I first started investing in hedge funds, I didn't invest for long, okay? Because I lost a shit ton of money, okay? And I'll tell you exactly how I lost it. See, I put a substantial amount of money. Um, you know, high six figures. I put it with a hedge fund that was recommended, blah, blah. And I met the guy, blah, blah, and all good, blah, blah. And he takes my money and he invests it in some tech stock, right? And this is like, the 2000 blow up and shit. And, everybody blew up and I lost like a third of my money. I was fucking furious. I was just fucking, just, outstandingly angry, right? And you know what he said? He said, well, everybody was doing it. So that's why I did it. It seemed like the right idea because everybody was doing it. I wanted to bitch slap that fucker to death. I pulled my money. And that was the last time I invested in any hedge fund because that's when I discovered the dirty little secret of hedge funds. See, the hedge funds, it doesn't pay them to have any kind of original ideas and to think outside the box and whatnot. No, no, no. It pays them to do what all the other hedge funds are doing. So hedge fund managers, investment managers at hedge funds, you know what they do? They don't do originally investing ideas. They find out what everybody else is investing in and then they follow along. You see how it works? Because if it goes well, they're a hero, right? But if it goes badly, they can say, well, everybody else was doing it, so I thought it was like a good thing. I was, going along with everybody else and the consensus was wrong. Sorry. You see? You see the attitude? And this isn't fucking finance, which is just one industry, an industry I know not well, but well enough to give a more or less informed opinion about it. But see, that's what's going on in hedge funds, and not just hedge funds, in every investment portfolio of whatever ilk, because all these Ivy League people who are running shit, how did they get ahead? Like I explained before, by doing what everybody else does. By following the consensus, never arguing with the consensus. And so, like in hedge funds, for instance, when the consensus is invest in XYZ company or industry, they all go there. And the thing is, of course, if they all go there, supply and demand, there's a lot more demand, so the price goes up. And so they look like heroes. And when it falls because XYZ company or industry was just a crock of shit, they're like, who could have known, man? We all went there. We all thought it was a good idea. Who could have known this? Well, anybody with 2 brain cells could have figured it out. You see what I'm saying? But they don't have, it's not that they don't have brain cells. It's that they have been conditioned to follow the consensus and never deviate from it. And that's why over the last 2 years, the consensus masks, the consensus on how to treat COVID, the consensus on this, that, whatever, lockdowns and all the rest of it. Why the fuck do you think that all the elites follow this bullshit? I mean, why? Think about it. I mean, realize what's going on. I mean, you who are listening to me, I don't think that most of you are elite, right? Most of you are commonsensical and got some brain cells, right? Okay, well, use those fucking brain cells and figure out why the fuck did these fuckers get it so wrong? Easy. It's been bred into them. All of their lives, they have been taught that they rise, they succeed by complying with the consensus. And so they complied with the consensus. That's what happened. And the consensus was absolutely catastrophically wrong. And well, they just shrug and who could have known, they say as they toss their hands up in the air and shrug and hunch their shoulders like, ooh, who could have known? Couldn't have known, Let me just show you the gesture. Oops, wait, there we are. Oh, who could have known? Yeah, that's basically what's going on with these fuckers. And the retards on wherever the fuck, some image board or some forum or whatever, they say, oh, these guys, these elitists, they all have a plan and blah blah blah. They don't have any fucking plan, you fucking moron. If only they had a fucking plan, at least it'd make fucking sense. They don't have a plan. They're fucking lemmings all running off a cliff. And they feel safe and secure because they're safety in numbers, because they're following the consensus. understand this. I mean, do you fuckers who are listening to me understand this? Hit me with a +1 just to make sure that you fuckers understand this, because you have to understand that these elite people, it's not part of any fucking plan, man. They're just cowards. But it's not even that they're cowards. You have to understand that it's been bred into them. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for the +1 so that you understand. It's so important that you understand this. See? Because, see, I was there. I saw these people. I have seen them over the years. They're all fucking idiots. Okay? I'll give you an example. The best single bet of my life was when I bought Citibank at 95 cents per share. Okay? This was in 2008, in late 2008. Citibank was just, the stock price was just tanking, the Citibank was, everybody was saying this fucking thing is going to go bankrupt, right? And, Obama had won the election, but he hadn't been sworn in yet. And I went in there and I bought like a whole boatload and some options at 95 cents per share, right? Long story short, I quintupled my money. Okay, because the thing fucking dropped, which I expected. Okay, my price point of pain, the moment when I would exit the position was 85 cents, and the thing dropped to 93 cents, 92 cents maybe. I forget. I think it was 93 cents. Anyway, it dropped to 93, and then slowly just started creeping back up. And it never really broke out on the upside, but it never dropped. I'd say like maybe a week after I bought it, it passed the 95-cent mark and just kept on going and never saw 95 cents again. It kept on going up. And I made out like a bandit on my options positions because I did like the typical 60-day, 90-day, 180-day cycle. And each time I was way in the money. It just kept on going and going. And like I said, within like 18 months, they did a reverse buyback because they didn't want to have their share price at $5. So they did a 10-to-1 reverse buyback. And so all of a sudden it's like $50. But it was, that meant basically that the shares I'd bought, I had bought them rather than 95 cents because it was a 10-to-1 buyback. I'd bought them at the equivalent of $9.50 per share. But same fucking thing. And the point is, I sold them at 505, $5.05, or the equivalent thereof, compared to my original purchase price. And it was a fairly large position. Okay, I did very, very well. Okay, and the options, man, Jesus Christ, that's where I made the real money. Okay, but even on the actual position, I did well. But anyway, the point, when I got into these positions, right, everybody at my brokerage firm thought that I was an idiot. One of them said so outright to my face. He said, "You're a fool. It's going to go bankrupt and blah blah blah." That's the consensus. I learned my fucking lesson from that hedge fund back in the dot-com bubble back in 2000. I learned my fucking lesson right good. Fuck that. I'm not going to follow the consensus off a cliff a second time, right? And I bought into Citibank, and my rationale was incredibly simple, and it was incredibly accurate. I guesstimated, or I basically bet that the United States government would never let Citibank go bankrupt. Never. And which is absolutely true. Because the Federal Reserve could never allow Citibank to either go bankrupt, and they could never nationalize it and straighten it out. Never. They could never do that for political reasons. Okay, because it would show, if they were to nationalize it and straighten it out, like like they would have in a lot of other countries, smaller countries, it would have been a signal that the entire American banking sector was underwater, and it would have been a complete disaster. And so the Federal Reserve, rather than, declaring Citibank bankrupt, which it was, instead of declaring it bankrupt, nationalizing it, straightening it out and whatnot, they just threw money at Citibank. They just opened a discount window and gave it a shit ton of fucking money. And well, some of that money trickled down to poor little old me. You know what I'm saying? That's how it happened. Some of that made up money made it into my hip pocket. It got my wallet nice and fat. Now when I sit down, it's real fucking uncomfortable because I got this big bulge in my ass from my big fat fucking wallet, courtesy of the Federal fucking Reserve, motherfucker. Yay me. But see, I didn't follow the consensus. Well, I didn't follow the consensus. I made my own estimation. But all the elite people, and these were like seasoned bankers and the whole thing, they all followed the consensus. And they left money on the table. Mhm. I mean, when they were selling me the options, they were laughing in my face. It was really fucking funny. And they were selling these options for cheap. They was like, "Oh, you're gonna lose money, so we'll cut you a break," you know? Condescending fucks, But that's the way these fuckers are, see? Because see, that's how they've been raised. You gotta understand. And I insist, I mean, this is the thing you fuckers have got to understand. There is no fucking plan with these fucking people. There isn't. They don't have a fucking plan. What happens is that their incompetence and stupidity sometimes is so grotesque that you say, no, it can't be that they're this fucking stupid. It has to be part of some 4D chess. I mean, let me ask you: isn't that what a lot of you think? Let me show my face so that you can see my expression. Isn't that what a lot of you fuckers think? That no, they can't be this fucking stupid. It's got to be part of a plan. It's got to be like the Jewish cabal with the Satanists, with the Jeffrey Epstein crowd, and the World Bank and the World Economic Forum. They're all in cahoots because nobody can be this fucking stupid. I'm here to tell you, motherfucker, they are. They are. Okay? That's the thing. They are. Okay? Yeah. And so understand that they are this fucking dumb. Because they've been raised to be this fucking dumb. They didn't get ahead by thinking independently. They got ahead by following the consensus and doing as they were told. Understand this, okay? Okay. I'm sorry to get a hot under the collar about it, but it's just, see, when somebody says something obviously stupid and they insist on it, you get pissed off. I mean, like you all know, that sometimes I LARP about the flat Earth, right? Or perhaps you don't know, but a lot of times I'll just say, "Yeah, the Earth is flat," just because it's stupid. It's such an incredibly stupid idea that I'm like, "Yeah, sure, yeah, it's a flat Earth. Fuck yeah, I'll defend that." The Earth is flat and it's like a disc sitting on the back of a giant turtle, and its turtles all the way down, motherfucker. Yeah, I'll say that for a laugh, right? But if somebody actually starts saying that the Earth is flat or that Game of Thrones is historical fiction, it's real history or some shit like that, right? I'm gonna be pissed off because that doesn't conform to reality. Hmm? Because it's not real. Because the Earth is not fucking flat. Game of Thrones is just some made up bullshit by J.R. Martin, who's never gonna fucking finish the fucking thing. It's all bullshit, right? And if somebody takes it at face value and really believes it, I just get irritated because it's stupid. And you do too, probably, right? I mean, if you say that, I don't fucking know that, the Capitol building in Washington D.C. was stormed by insurrectionists. You're like, fuck you, man. It was just a bunch of yahoos who were allowed to go in, right? I mean, you get pissed off because you know how insanely stupid it is to believe that they are insurrectionists. That Buffalo man wanted to take over the government and declare himself president of the United States. Come on, motherfucker. Come on, wake up. Of course. And you get pissed off when somebody says some bullshit like that. Well, same fucking thing for me. When somebody says that these fuckers have some big plan, it's all part of a 4D move. It just drives me nuts because you're not seeing the picture of these elites. You're not understanding them. They just follow the consensus. Simple as that. Okay. And like I say, they have no incentive to make better decisions because they have every incentive to get more accreditation. The good decisions don't get them plaudits. The good decisions don't get them more money or better positions or more slots on their resume. No, the good decisions don't matter. Therefore, they don't care to make good decisions. You see? And when they finally fail so catastrophically that it can't be hidden anymore, what happens to them? They get recycled by academia. They go and work for fucking universities and teach their bullshit to the next generation. That's what happens. And the cycle keeps going because these fuckers educate these kids coming up, educate them in their loserdomishness. Is that even a fucking word? They educate them in their loserishness, and the young kids, they get contagion, and they go out in the world with the arrogance and stupidity of these fucking retards. That's what happens. That's how it works. And it's oh man, it's just so fucking frustrating. But anyway, but you see the cycle. See? That's how it works. Ugh. Thus, the elites running things do not know what they are doing. In essence, they studied for the test. They didn't study to learn. That's the key issue. See? It's so fucking frustrating. And the worst part is that, see, they have that arrogance of the ignorant. Like Ned Price, I wish the audio had worked on that fucking video because it would have been so delicious for you guys to see the arrogance on the guy's face. Okay. That's why I suggest you go look at that fucking video. It's 7 minutes long, but you want to watch every single second of it, of his his exchange with Mike Lee. Because Mike Lee is, he's, like I said, he's an older guy who knows what the fuck he's doing. Okay. And he's asking the totally relevant questions. And this Ned Price asshole, typical elite of the kind I've described, right? This fucker is just looking at him with a condescension, a superciliousness that you're like, what the fuck is this cocksucker doing? Well, I shouldn't call him a cocksucker because he's an actual cocksucker. You know what I'm saying? And I bet that the fucker became gay because he realized it would help his career. I'm telling you right now, that's what I believe. A lot of these guys do. A lot of these guys decide to have a certain kind of personal life because it will improve their position. Look, back in the 50s, this happened a lot. Guys would get married young to some pretty woman, not Julia Roberts movie, but rather some pretty, kind of like Doris Day type chick, because it would improve their position in the corporate climb, And the same thing is happening now. A lot of these guys are gay because they know it helps them in their corporate career. I mean, their fucking sexuality, man. I mean, that's how compliant these people are. I mean, I told you before that Liz Truss had been raised, a left-wing girl, and she wound up joining the Tories at age 20. Why the fuck do you think that happened? The Tories are the Conservative Party, by the way. And why the fuck do you think it happened? Well, because the woman has no principles. None of these fucking people do. Because principles doesn't help them advance. It's all about incentive structures. You got to understand that. Everything in life is about incentives. If I have an incentive to act a certain way and it will benefit me, well, then fucking A, I'm going to act that way. No? I mean, like, see, back in like 2012, I think it was, or something like that, the Obama administration said that it was going to prioritize people who were LGBTQ. Okay. Well, I mean, LGBTQP plus. Guess what the P stands for? Anyway, these literal cocksuckers, right? They came out of the woodwork. All of a sudden, all these guys are gay. Yeah, of course. See, because if you say that you're only going to hire or you're going to prioritize hiring people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and all the rest of it, then what the fuck are you going to do? You're going to say, yeah, I'm rainbow flagged, motherfucker. Yeah, because you want to get that job. See, that's what's happened. Incentives. If the incentive is to be pristine and perfect and go through this very narrow path to get into Ivy League school, then you're going to follow that path. And you're not going to stick your neck out. You're going to be risk averse. You're going to keep your nose clean and do whatever it takes to get into that Ivy League school. I don't know how the fuck I got into the Ivy League school. I actually suspect I know why. Because even though I put down that I was white in all of my applications, which I did, okay, because I consider myself white, because I don't have any fucking Indian heritage in my blood, right? I wish I did, because our Indians in Chile, they were badass motherfuckers. The Mapuches, they were fucking savages. They were fucking horrible. Okay, I mean, they were mean motherfuckers. The forefathers of mine were killing those fuckers in the beginning of the 20th century. That's how crazy those fuckers were. They were just all kinds of insane. Anyway, I wish I were part Mapuche, right? Because they were badass. They weren't like the fucking Incas or the Mexican Indians or the Colombian Indians. Those were just lazy bums and just got conquered, lickety split like that. Fuck that. The Mapuches, man, they fought to the bitter end to the beginning of the 20th century, man. 500 fucking years. Well, not 500. It was what? 370 years. You know, from 1542, when my first ancestors got to Chile, and they did. My first ancestors were in the first expedition of Spaniards who got to Chile, 1542 until like the 1920s. So yeah, you know, 370 odd years of fighting these fucking Mapuches who are just fucking horrible. You know, I wish I descended from those fuckers. Man. They were bad. You know, I can tell you all kinds of horrifying stories. But anyway, see, I always declared that I was white because I am, and so. But with a name like Gonzalo Lira, come on, I'm Latino at least, right? And so I think I got into a lot of Ivy League schools just because of my first and last name. Okay, actually my first name, because Lira last name sounds Italian, maybe, even though it comes from the Isle of Man. To tell you the truth, it's one of the spin-offs from the last name Lear. You know, all the McLears, yeah, Lear and Lira, yeah. So anyway, how the fuck did I get into this thing? Oh yeah, when I applied, I got into a bunch of Ivy League schools, and I don't know how the fuck that happened. Okay, I got into Stanford, I got into Yale, didn't get into Princeton, didn't get into Harvard, got into Duke, got into Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins was a fucking safety school. Got into Dartmouth, and the only reason I went to Dartmouth was because they had a skiway. That was the reason I went. I figured it'd be great to go skiing, you know, in the winter and take classes at the same time. That was my priority, because I was a fucking idiot. And retrospectively, it was as good a place as any, because in the end, it would have taught me the same fucking thing. And what it taught me was that all these fucking retards, all of them, are just compliant assholes. And they never stick their necks out. They never speak up. They never object to any bullshit. They don't even call out the bullshit. They just accept it because it's been bred into them. You gotta understand that, okay? And they'll never admit that they're wrong. And they will always go with the consensus, no matter how insane that consensus might be. They will never stick their neck out, okay? So this is the elite that we have in the West. And they're a fucking disaster. Okay? Because you see, the funny thing is that they are supremely conservative. Because you think of conservatives and liberals like political parties. But see, I am politically very conservative. But on a personal level, I'm extremely liberal. I'm liberal in the sense of, like, not that I am socially liberal or something like that, or that my personal life is liberal. No, I mean in the sense that I am willing to take risks. And these people, they might be on the political left, they might be Democrats or Labour Party, as in the UK, as the case may be, but they are extremely conservative. They don't take any risks. My entire existence is one giant risk, one risk after the next. I think it's great. I think that, you know, taking risks is a part of life, and life is way too short to play it safe. That's basically my mentality. And this is the diametric opposite of all these fucking elite people in the West. All these people who are like, you know, save the planet and climate change and all this bullshit, and, you know, Russia bad, and you know, Trump evil, and, you know, all this crap. But in the end, they're so conservative. See? Because they are risk averse. They are all about the consensus, doing what other people are doing, and never, ever, ever taking any risk. And never, ever, ever standing up and fighting for something greater than themselves. Understand that. It's a real tragedy, you know? It's a real tragedy because the elites that we have, they are incredibly smart. And that's the tragedy. The talent, the raw talent of these people is unbelievable. But it's been so misdirected and squandered. These people, they are so energetic and so smart and so industrious that if they were properly motivated, properly led, and they were pointed in a productive direction, they'd make of our world a paradise. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding or being hyperbolic or ironic. No, no, no. I'm dead serious, dead honest, just totally forthright. I'm telling you, and this is the truth. See, it's an incredible amount of brains and hard work because these fuckers are so hardworking. You have no fucking idea. These fuckers work, dude. Unbelievable work ethic. See, and unbelievable ambition rather. But the problem is it's so poorly directed. The aim of what they're trying to achieve is so poorly, it's a tragedy, you know? It's the squandered energy and brain power just squandered. I think that that's the greatest tragedy of them all, okay? That all these people were just, they've been misguided. They've been guided wrong. I mean, misguided in the literal sense. They have been directed in the wrong direction. And now they're running things and they're making a complete disaster of it. And because of it, our civilization is collapsing. It is, because let's not pretend otherwise. The Western democracies are in the process of collapse. We saw yesterday or today or whenever it was, pictures from Australia. Australia has 25 million people. 1.5 million of those people showed up in Canberra to protest the lockdowns. 1.5 million fucking people. That's 6% of the population showed up to one fucking protest. Dude, if that were the United States, that would be roughly 20 million people showing up in Washington, D.C. Imagine 20 million people showing up in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. isn't even a city of 1 million people, I think, maybe 1.5 million, right? 20 million people showed up in Washington, D.C. That would be some fucking protest now, wouldn't it? That's what happened in Australia. And the leadership, the elites in Australia, they're going to ignore them. They're going to just blow them off. They're not going to listen to their grievances. 6% of your population is pissed off enough to go to your fucking capital and protest, and these fuckers are going to blow them off. The next protest in Australia after that, after they blow them off this time, it's going to be violent. And it's going to be cataclysmically violent. It's going to be the kind of thing where, they're going to find some cop and rip him limb for limb. Because when people are not listened to and they are blown off like this, what, you think people take it lying down? No. I haven't seen the news yet as I'm talking to you now. But if the Australian police start getting violent with the Australian protesters, which is in all likelihood, because the police are going to be told by their leadership to crack down, crack some skulls, restore order, and blah, blah, blah. The next protest, the protesters are going to kill cops. They're going to literally crucify them. Mhm. Yeah, because if you get to a position where your leadership will not listen to you and the leadership starts throwing goons at you, what the fuck you do? You fight back. The Australians don't have any guns. They took them all away. Oh, they're probably regretting that now. I'm sure they are. But they're going to get creative. Sure. A mob gets creative real fucking fast. When they're really pissed off enough, they're going to start crucifying people. And I don't mean this in a figurative sense. I mean this in a literal sense of grabbing some cop and stringing him up on some lamppost and stretching him out until he dies, crucifying him. They're going to do some shit like that. It's inevitable. Because if you dismiss the grievances of the people long enough, that inevitably happens. And the reason that the elites dismiss the legitimate grievances of their own people is because they don't identify with them. They don't have anything in common with the common people. To them, to the elites, the common people, they're between a foreign people of some weird sort and serfs, and at the same time, something to be afraid of. I know from firsthand experience, man. I know what I'm talking about. They don't like the common man. They fear him, despise him, dislike him. And also, a big chunk of it comes from the fact that a lot of these people in the elites come from lower middle class backgrounds, and there is always that social insecurity of potentially sliding back. And so, those people who come from that background are the ones who hate them the most. It's a weird human tick, but I've seen it everywhere, in every country, in every society, that those middling people who are trying to rise up, they kick down at their peers the hardest. The people who are really at the top, the real aristocrats, they don't kick down to the people at the bottom. Why would they? Yeah, because they have no fear of ever sliding down there, right? But the people who are kind of like in the middle, they're the ones who kick down the hardest. Anyway, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be real fucking ugly. And I have no idea how this shit is going to end. But anyway, let me hold on a second. Let me just invite people on. Let me put the link in and hop on. And yeah, I'm going to have some water because I am a thirsty turtle. Cheers. Good vodka. Oh, yeah. That's a good thing here about Ukraine. They make real good vodka. See? Morshinska. See? This is the bottle of vodka that I usually buy. They sell it in plastic bottles because, people drink vodka all the time so much that, what the hell? Why not? Just plastic bottles. Why spend money on glass bottles? Okay. We have Arthur on deck. Let's bring on Arthur. Arthur, how's it going?
Hey, Gonzalo, going good. Thanks for the show.
Yeah, no problem. What's on your mind, man?
Yeah, so I got something to say. It was mainly from your last webinar, but it ties into a lot of the themes that you presented here.
Yep.
In your last webinar, you were talking about how to take inventory on where to go.
Yeah.
Basically, my situation, I'm a corporate wage slave. And I went to a good school, got a pretty difficult degree. I didn't go to Ivy League school or anything like that. I worked for
What's your degree?
In engineering.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I got a master's degree also. And so, but I worked for like a huge company, huge corporate America company, one of those like huge ones, and it's heavily regulated. And it's basically like, I'm not going to create my own business. I'm not going to do my own startup. And I'm just trying to find a way to become financially secure and escape. And I'm thinking the best way for me, or what I'm thinking right now, I want to get your thoughts on, is basically go to a startup and then hope and try to work my ass off and get equity early in a startup company, and then hopefully that it is successful, and then I can, with that equity, then I can have enough money where I can be financially free. Because being a corporate wage slave in corporate America, it's not.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I
think it's a bad idea to go to one startup. Go to a bunch, and what you could do is offer your services, like consulting services, like an engineering consulting of whatever they need, and say, don't pay me in money, pay me in equity in your startup. And you go to 10 different startup companies. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea how you do this, but like, hear me out the idea, because see, startup companies are like the lottery, right? And like venture finance companies, they invest in a whole bunch of startups and they assume that most of them are going to go bankrupt, right? Because they do. It's the 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 that succeed, right? And the 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 that becomes like a unicorn or whatever the fuck, and becomes like all kinds of money, right? And so they're playing the game of averages. Now, you have a commodity, which is like engineering knowledge and skill, right? And so what you can do is you can offer the startups that you will do some specific work for them, some task that they need done, or that they need like a consultancy in, or some plans for some engineering shit, whatever it is your specialty is, right? And you tell them, don't pay me, my hourly rate of what's a consultant charge, 300 an hour or 500 an hour, whatever the fuck you charge per hour, right? Don't pay me that in money, pay it to me in equity, and give me like 2% or however much you could get from each of these startups for you to outline all their engineering needs, and you promise that you'll show up for any dog and pony show that they have for any prospective investor, and that you'll present them the engineering part of the presentation. Since you're an actual engineer, you'll know how to talk and present the shit so it sounds logical and sane, right? But you do it to several. You do it to like 10 different startups. Because if you do it to one, well, if that startup turns out to be the one that's really successful, yay for you. But if there's a 90% chance that it fails, then you're going to put all that effort into one, and 90% chance that it fails. What's the upside of that? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Spread your risk.
yeah, I see what you're saying, and I'm thinking because if you look at a lot of the high level leadership or former leadership of Tesla, all
Yeah.
those dudes, the CFO, the CTO, the chief engineer, all those dudes broke off, and now they're all forming their own startups in the kind of the same space, like the battery space, the electric vehicle space, the renewable, and like all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And like right now, working for a huge company, a huge engineering company, like it's very much the same as what you're talking about with like the elites. Like to move up to the higher echelons in management in these companies, like you can't be the person that says, hey, this is a dumb idea and here's why. You kind of, everyone just has to kind of like go along with whatever the boss is saying, even if it's fucking dumb. And
Yep.
if you stand out and you make a name for yourself and you're like, hey, this is not wise, here is why, well, all of a sudden you're like, you're the one that stands out, and they're like, he's a naysayer, like, oh, he's not with the program, get rid of him. And
He's
it's just,
not. He's not a team player.
yeah, exactly. It's so fucking dumb, man.
Yeah.
But
Well, look, that's the system we currently have. Okay. I mean, I gave a diagnosis. Somebody was asking, Reinhardt was asking if I was going to give a solution. There's no fucking solution to this fucking problem. Okay. It's way baked into the cake. And so the only solution is like total societal collapse, and for the competent people to fucking take over. And dude, that's the Roman Empire took what, 600 years to collapse. It wasn't like an overnight thing. Okay. Our empire, it's not going to take 600 years, but it's going to take a good goddamn long while. Okay. And if we have like some sort of dictator who gets the shit more or less organized for a while, this collapse might take a lot longer. So who knows? I mean, right now I'm betting that Tulsi Gabbard is going to be our next dictator. I'm not kidding, by the way. I think that she's going to be the dictator of America. I think
yeah,
that she's positioning herself as that.
yeah, I'm thinking the Republican ticket for the next presidential election will be Tulsi Gabbard and Nikki Haley running as Republicans.
Not Nikki Haley. And too many people hate her guts. But Tulsi Gabbard, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm with
Yeah.
you on that one. And
Yeah.
one last thing, it's just
Sure.
it's like being in the mid 30s. It's a fucking horrible feeling to wake up knowing that 10, like, like you always say, the days are long but the decades are short. Like you
Yeah.
wake up one day and you realize what your parents told you, like get good grades in high school, get a good education, go to a good college, get a good degree, work for a good company with benefits, and then you follow that shit. And then you wake up one day and you realize, like, God damn, I'm a fucking wage slave, and like there's no escaping this shit. It's
Well,
pretty bad, man.
there is escaping it. You just got to get creative. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for instance, you're like doing engineering shit, right? So would it be possible, for instance, I'm spitballing, I have no fucking idea what your situation is, but would it be possible for you to say, leave the company, but on good terms, and say, look, I want to set up my own consulting firm, and you guys can hire me to consult on this shit that I was doing. I'm just giving you an example, okay? Because if you work for somebody else, okay, you're selling your time. I've said before, there was a fucking video I made, right, a few weeks ago, that there are 3 ways to make money in this world. You can either sell your time, sell somebody else's time, or acquire something that later on you trade for much more value later on, right? Those are the only three ways to make money. And so, see, if you cannot take something and process it and upgrade its value, and you don't want to be selling your hours, for a wage, then you've got to organize a company of some sort to sell other people's time. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way to go. Those are the 3 ways to make money, man. That's it.
I know.
So anyway, anything else on your mind now, Arthur?
I was just gonna say, just like a lot of people won't change the oil in their car because they just don't have the patience, or they don't want to fuck with it and shit. A lot of people aren't cut out to like make their own company, and do all the hiring and all that shit. And that's why
you have to know. You have to know if you're that guy.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking really the only way that I can think of is try to get in early on the ground floor in a startup and try to,
But like I said, diversify your risk. Do the same thing to multiple companies. There's nothing wrong with that, and especially if you're not charging them and just saying, give me just a piece of the action for your time. It might prove to be the wisest course of action, but don't bet the ranch on one. I mean, you bet it on one and you're just, cruising for a bruising. You know what I say?
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, it would be better to bet on that one than stay where I'm currently fucking at.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's you. But if you have the opportunity, try to add on more than just one.
Understood. Cool, man. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate your time.
No problem. Take it easy, man.
Later.
Hey, Raj, how's it going?
Hi. This is first time ever speaking to you or writing or anything.
Hey,
I first saw you on FNF.
Thanks very much for being on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I first saw you on FNF when you were speaking to them. I think you only had the interview once, Fresh and Fit.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be going on again like March, I think, or something like that. Because when I start like doing content again, that's when I want to get on the show, so I can post out where I'm producing content. But yeah, they were great guys to me. I mean, they've had some ups and downs as of late, but as far as I'm concerned, they were always real nice to me, and they never told me any lie or any story that wasn't true. So I don't have anything bad to say about them, and insofar as how they treated me real good.
Well, I'm glad they invited you because that's how I got onto you. Otherwise, I would never have known about CRP.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
One quick tip is when you do join them, you got to have your broadband or something.
Oh yeah,
Last time it was
just
it was
like real shit. Yeah,
it was real shit. It was cut off every now and then.
But that won't happen the next time. The next time I'll do it here in my studio where I have like really good internet connection and all that. So
brilliant.
So anyway, what's on your mind?
Okay, my main question is, you just quickly during this conversation you mentioned something about the options being 60, 90, 120 out. What was the strategy behind that? What is the thing you've come out with that, and why did it make you so much money?
The specifics of it I've forgotten because it's not something that I like obsess about. Okay. I'm trying to reconstruct what I would have done. Because usually when I do that, I'm usually assuming that, at the near term one, I only get options when I'm really sure that I think I'm going to have a near term bump. I'm talking long options, right?
Okay.
And if short options, the same thing. When I'm pretty confident that I'm going to, I usually do it thinking that the first one and the 45 or 60-day option and the 180-day option are going to be the big bumps, and the 91 is going to be relatively mild, because I'm figuring that something awful is going to happen or something very good is going to happen in the near term. That's when I pull the trigger on any option. But I don't bet the ranch on the shortest option. I usually bet the ranch on the longest option. If I have it like a 3-tier time schedule, like what I do is I'm thinking that the first one I'm going to be devoting like say 25% of what I'm putting in, and then like say 35%, and then 40%, or something like that. So like stretch it out to the end. Okay.
So the
And
one
like
after the money make a lot of money.
Yeah, the last time I did an options was in February of 2020, when I thought that the whole market was going to go down because of supply chain issues, because of the China COVID. Because at this time, these were bets I made on I want to say the 6th of February. It was the first Monday of February, because we just arrived in Zermatt with my wife and kids, and we were going to go skiing. And it was the Monday, and I was desperately calling my my bankers to get into these positions. And I got into these positions because I saw the COOF was coming, right? And I got them for 60 days, 90 days, 180 days. And what happened was that in mid-March, in early March, they shut down everything. And I remember being on a flight from Kharkov to Amsterdam. I was in Poland because it was the lot flight from Kharkov to Warsaw, and then another flight from Warsaw to Amsterdam. And I'm on the plane in the Chopin Airport in Warsaw, and these soldiers come in and they're measuring your temperature and shit, right? And I'm like, holy shit, this shit is coming down, right? And after that, I get to Amsterdam. Like the next day, they lock everything down, right? And it was like the 16th of March. No, it was before that. It was like I guess the 12th or 13th. It was like a Thursday. It was a Wednesday or Thursday that I get calls from my counterparty, the banks that I'd structured my positions, my short positions. They were calling me, and I'm like, what the fuck are they calling me for, right? And the message was they wanted to buy out my options. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm like, my thinking at that time is that if these fuckers are calling me, and I'm a small fry, if they're asking to buy out my positions, then number one, they're calling their entire client list. And I'm like number 50 or 100 on their fucking list. They got shit tons of people far, far more wealthy than I am. But if they're calling me, they're fucking terrified of their exposure. And so they want to get that risk off their books no matter what. And that's what I'm thinking, number one. And number two, I'm thinking, what if this shit keeps on going down and my counterparty gets wiped out? Okay. And because that's what happens when you have a serious crisis.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself, if I ride it out all the way, could it be that I make a shit ton of money, but my counterparty can't pay and is bankrupt? And what do I get? I get nothing, right? And I mean, this isn't like the FDIC that guarantees your fucking deposits, right? It doesn't work that way. And so what I did was, like the 16th of March, they came at me with offers to buy all of my positions. And I said, yeah. And I sold them. It was the best deal of my life. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I improved my net worth by over 35%.
Wow.
And yeah, in the one go. And these fuckers called me. And here was the beauty of it. Okay. Number one, I got into these shorts because I thought the supply chain issues would affect everything. So I wasn't very much out of the money. Okay. But the market tanked so spectacularly that all of a sudden my positions were enormous. Number one. But the point is, see, I thought that the supply chain issues would hurt the valuations of these companies, and it wasn't that at all. What happened was that there was just a generalized panic that everybody got scared shitless, and the whole market just tanked, right? And so it was dumb luck. Okay, that's what I'm basically trying to say. It was dumb luck that I got into the position, number one. And number two, when I sold out my position, right, it just so happened that I sold it out at the exact bottom of the market. It was the day that the markets bottomed. Okay. And again, this was blind, dumb luck. Okay. It wasn't me being a genius. I mean, if I wanted to, I could show you the receipts and say, "Oh yeah, man, I'm so
No,
fucking
no.
smart, man. I knew it. I knew it was coming, man. And when these fuckers called me, I knew that the Federal Reserve and the the European Central Bank, they were all going to prop up the markets, and I knew I had them. I knew it." Bullshit.
Well, kudos
It's
to
no
you
fucking
for
shit.
actually
But it
knowing.
was luck. It was luck.
Yeah.
And that's my point. When you get involved in these deals, it's playing the fucking casino. Don't pretend otherwise. Don't give me any bullshit that you know what you're doing. You don't. Okay? If you're truly honest, you're going to admit that the money you make is fucking luck. Okay? Because I was lucky to get into the positions in the first place. And I was lucky that these dumb morons decided to pull the trigger and buy back their positions right when the market was at the very bottom, and the next day it just bounced. Like it was just like this. Look, it went boink, and right when it hits the bottom, that's when I sell. Which of course, if you're selling short positions, that's the highest point of the market, right?
Yeah.
And immediately after, it just curves right up. It was just so damn funny, man. It was just like, and I started watching the markets, the way it just like went up and up and up, and I was just laughing my fucking ass off. And these guys, I never heard from them again, by the way. I never heard from them again. They must hated my guts. I don't even know if they still have their jobs anymore. Because what happened after that is I decided I'm not going to be in the markets, no markets whatsoever. I made different moves insofar as my money is concerned. I parked it into long-term, basically real estate, not commercial real estate, by the way. I got into residential real estate because also when the lockdowns happened, I knew that because I talked about it with a guy in Amsterdam. We were the only two guys at the WeWork because I was renting office space at the WeWork there because I don't like to work at home, and what happened was that we were talking about it and we were saying, well, everybody's doing this remote work shit and people are loving it. And we theorized, I remember this in like March and April of 2020, we were theorizing that people would not want to go back to work because it's so comfy to be working from home in your pajamas and slippers. You get shit tons done. You don't have the ugly commute. You're relaxed, you're mellow, you're having your cup of tea or whatever the fuck, and getting your job done. People aren't going to be wanting to go back to work, quite apart from the fact that you don't know how long this fucking lockdown is going to end, right? And so we were arguing, we were like spitballing that, maybe there won't be a return to the old school of working with like a big commercial real estate and big office spaces and shit like that. And we were looking at WeWork, where we were at. It was empty. And I came to the conclusion in March and April of 2020, two conclusions. Number one, that COVID was bullshit, even though I was scared shitless and I was doing videos about it. But I was concluding that it was bullshit, and I was totally sure it was bullshit by June of 2020 because there were no dead homeless people. That's the thing that clued me in. Because like there were homeless people around and they were all fine. And I thought, well, if this is so fucking deadly, these fuckers should die. They're not dying. So it's not that big of a deal. Okay. That was conclusion number one. And conclusion number two was commercial real estate is never coming back. And it never has. It never will. I mean, and you got some cities like San Francisco that are fucking ghost towns, man. And that's kind of creepy. But people are just not going to work. And people are moving to these small, cheaper cities and telecommuting. And nobody's saying anything. A friend of mine recently bought a house in upstate New York, real gorgeous house, very lovely little town in the middle of fucking nowhere. And he's just telecommuting and no problem. And it's, he says that he's going to have to fly out to his office out in Chicago, like maybe once a month or something, just, touch base kind of thing. But the rest of the time he's going to do all of his work from home and he's happy as a clam. And so, yeah, that's the future, man. And so, sorry, I've been way off, on a tangent here and just talking away. So what else is on your mind, Raj?
I've got the other issue with the inflation side of whether to stay in property, whether to add on property because of inflation. Or
what you want to do in an inflationary environment is load up on debt at a fixed interest rate. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's already in the works.
Yeah.
And that's
but you got to make sure that it's a fixed interest rate, no adjustables for any reason, or else it defeats the whole purpose.
Well, in UK, you can only the maximum I can find is 10 years. It's not like the US where you can fix it for 30 years. I mean,
well, why don't you get something in the US? You can do it if you're in the UK.
Yeah, well, I'm in partnership with the guys in Texas somewhere, and they've just bought land for 400,000. Sorry, 600,000, and they've already been offered 400,000, and we only finished the purchasing of it about 2 months ago. So it's gone up by 400%.
You bought it for 600? I'm confused.
Yeah, sorry. The actual purchase of the land was 600,000.
Yep.
And now it's worth $1 million.
Oh, way to go!
And and one of my friends sent me a Telegram message with this little clip saying in November or December, both months in US it rose by 18%.
Yeah,
month on month, which was phenomenal.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't make this shit up. you know,
it's unbelievable. Yeah, and in other places it's going up even more. I mean, yeah, like apartments in Miami, for instance, which are really pretty much commodities, they're going through the roof. So yeah, you got to look around, and there's lots of money to be made in an inflationary environment. But the shit's going to go down pretty badly. Okay. And I'm thinking that 2023 is going to be the year. It's going to be the Weimar year. I think that's when the whole thing is over. And I'm trying to get out of cash as quickly as possible. And it can be surprisingly difficult sometimes. So yeah, you want to get out of cash as quick as possible, because 2023, that's going to be fucking ugly. That's going to be the bad year. So yeah, because
when I've already got into in the normal groceries terms, I am already got a year's supply of all this stuff: oil, rice, flour. This shit's still going to go up massively. It's not going to stand still.
Yeah, the thing is, see, the staples, food staples. Yeah, that's smart to get, but the thing long term, when the shit really hits the fan and things just go south, like totally, properties are going to be, people are going to be getting out of properties because they're going to need cash, because they're not going to be able to afford food. And so that's when you're going to have the real deals. Okay. I always tell a story. This is a true story. During the Allende government in Chile in 1973, in around June, July, something like that, an uncle of mine, who at that time was not yet an uncle, he hadn't married my aunt. It was a sister of my mother's. This uncle of mine, he had like this shitty little MG, like a 125. And he was offered an apartment for the car, because at the time the inflation was out of control in Chile because of the Allende government, the leftist government, and the inflation was out of control, and you could get hard currency from a car, but nobody wanted to buy an apartment. And so the apartment was, they offered to swap the apartment for the car. And my uncle, I mean, he was studying architecture. And my uncle, being, a young kid and stupid, he was like, no, I'm not going to lose my car. Right. And what happened was that, of course, the car became nothing in just a few years, but the apartment is still standing. And it was a primo luxury apartment that is worth like $1.5 million today. So yeah, it was a bad decision. So the point is, when a hyperinflationary environment hits, people are going to be getting out of assets because they're going to need cash to buy essentials, and that's the opportunity. I mean, you're taking advantage of other people's misery, but that's the opportunity.
The other thing I'm a bit big on is on crypto as well. How will crypto fare in this?
I don't. Well, you never know, because it's novel, so it's unpredictable. Okay. And I was offered crypto back in 2011. I didn't get on board with that shit. I was offered 2,000 Bitcoin for $10,000. And I didn't get on board with that shit because I thought it was just bullshit. I still think it's bullshit, but I've realized that there are a lot of people who believe in this bullshit. Okay. If I'd gotten into that position of 2000 Bitcoin, today, how much is Bitcoin? $30,000, $35,000?
42,000.
Okay, 42,000. I'd have what? $84 million,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I'd be sitting pretty. But see, it's like the lottery numbers. After the fact, everybody knows the lottery number. But before the fact, that's the trick. I'm always impressed by the people that I knew who offered me these Bitcoins, right? How smart they were and on the ball. But I just never thought that so many people would buy into the bullshit. So here we are. Anyway, Raj, great talking
Lovely,
to
mate.
you.
Thanks.
Take it
Thank
easy,
you.
man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Okay?
Take care.
Hey, Jonathan, how's it going?
Doing good, Coach. How about yourself?
Pretty good. What's on your mind, man?
Well, chilling in Florida without a mask, worried about the economy, And I would like to add what you were saying earlier about it's going to take a major collapse for all this shit to kind of settle out.
Yeah.
I think Tulsi Gabbard will do her shit. She's gonna try and become president. Maybe she will, maybe she won't.
Yeah.
But she's kind of hot. So hey, maybe we can get a little mommy milker president.
I don't know. I have
the
a bad
podium.
feeling about her. I have a very bad feeling about her, to tell you the
No,
truth.
she's sketchy for sure though. Her dad was a big time politician, and can you still hear me because of the sirens or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Her dad was a politician in Hawaii for a long time. He's extremely liberal, so you can understand some of her views probably trickled down from him.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that she is who she is trying to portray herself to be. There's something about her that I think is very, very sketchy. And I would not endorse her. I mean, because everything she says, I'm like, yeah, it sounds, but there's something about her that I'm like, no, there's something insincere about her, something, no, I
She's
just don't buy her.
regurgitating something.
What?
She has pretty good advisors that are basically telling her, hey, pull along with this conservative crap, and when we try to run,
I mean, no, she's a very capable politician, but there's something about her that I'm like, no, I don't buy her bullshit. I just don't. I think that there's something fundamentally evil about her, bottom line. Because I've always thought that, like Trump is a fucking idiot, but I've always thought that Trump is fundamentally a decent guy. Okay. There's something about Trump that that's always struck me as he's a blowhard and an arrogant shithead, but fundamentally decent. I have to say that it's little detail. You know what it is to me? It's that he likes kids in a non-pedo way. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he likes them. He likes kids, and he when he was president, he had some kid who wanted to mow his lawn or some shit like that, and he was like all like in favor of it and shit. And like some little crippled kid was once at the White House, and he made like a big to do about the crippled kid, right? He likes kids. He's got that grandfather vibe, right? And the other thing too is that when he heard that Jeffrey Epstein had accosted some 16-year-old girl who worked at his Mar-a-Lago resort, he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out. That's something that the mainstream press doesn't notice. But anyway, those little clues have always made me think that the guy is fundamentally decent. He's just an arrogant shithead and kind of like an idiot. But Tulsi Gabbard, there's something about her that I'm like, no. I think that she's sketchy as fuck. I think that there's something really, just really dicey about her. I don't know what the fuck it is.
I think it's the same with I don't trust Ron DeSantis. I think DeSantis
Oh yeah,
is a
he's
closet
gay.
homosexual. Yeah, he's a closet homosexual.
Yeah,
he won't.
The voice. I don't give a fuck, man. I don't care if I sound homophobic or whatever. But there's something gay about him, and I don't care if it's homophobic. I do not trust homosexual. Yeah. I have known a lot of homosexuals. My lawyer in LA is a homosexual, but I don't trust them.
What do you think about Peter Thiel? Do you know anything about Peter Thiel?
Oh yeah, no, that guy's sketchy as fuck. He's sketchy, yeah. Fuck, and he surrounds himself with these boys that I think that it's not that he mentors them, he mentors them. Okay, God knows what the fuck that's all about. Like the Lonsdale guy, that guy who co-founded Palantir, And like Palantir and a lot of his business, they're all sketchy.
Alex Karp, that guy, he's also from Stanford. He's a Stanford grad as well.
Yeah. There's something fundamentally unwholesome about that whole crowd. I would want nothing to do with them.
I read his book 0 to 1, and a
it's pretty
lot
good.
of it's a good book, and I've taken.
I'm not saying that the guy's stupid. I'm not saying he's stupid. I'm not saying that he doesn't have insights. I'm not saying that. I'm thinking he's morally sketchy. That there's something off about that guy.
Well, he's an open libertarian, and he is openly gay, but his one secret about libertarians, and everybody knows this, is that they're secretly plotting to take over the world under the mask of freedom. And it's a joke.
I heard the best take on libertarians, that libertarians are basically house cats who are really fierce, and they don't realize how good they've got it. And I thought that was a very, very good insight. Yeah. They're house cats who don't know how good they got it and think that they're all kinds of fierce when they're really just, pampered and coddled by the society around them. And that's basically accurate. That's what I think. Because if these fuckers were really like, if they actually lived in a kind of like a state of nature kind of situation, they quickly drop this libertarian bullshit and go back to full on government and shit. No, fuck them. Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard of I don't mean to keep this going, but have you ever heard of Jacques Fresco? He was he's like this. He died, but he was this New World philosopher. He went to the UN and did a bunch of shit. But there's this like utopian city in South Florida where it's literally all like sketchy.
Florida man strikes again.
Yeah. If you look him up, it's very interesting. But he literally made this whole like community where the homes are all white and they're made out of like eco-friendly materials, and everything was based on like a resource-based economy. There wasn't any money. And you can go there. You can take like a tour of the city. And I thought about doing it, but it's very libertarian, very like no religion. You don't need any languages. We're all the same. And there's some respect.
Florida man strikes again.
Yeah.
Florida man strikes again. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, my main thing is,
what's your question? What's on your mind?
My real question is, where do you think the South is going? Because from what I've seen, is Georgia is screwed. Georgia as a state is already ran by incompetent people. Yeah. Alabama's doing okay. Florida's pretty much just having everybody move here. But I feel that there might be a future secession going on if things are pushed hard enough. But then everybody's gonna pull the whole Confederacy thing, try and
no. The thing is real. I ask you, what's Mississippi like right now?
As far as I know, they're some of them are anti-Trump because Trump recently talked about the vaccine at a Mississippi rally.
Yeah,
and everybody booed him.
Yeah,
but Mississippi has always been a very strange state. They vote Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a Confederate general. He was born in Mississippi, and he was very he worked in Mississippi mainly, but he was one of the most like hardcore Confederate generals. My family, my fucking great grandfather was a physician in the Confederate military in Texas. And I don't plan on leaving. I plan on staying in America, but I think if the Biden administration pushes hard enough and we start seeing some more sketchy shit going on, I think some people are just going to straight up leave and just say, we're not dealing with this union anymore. And I'm not saying there will be a Confederacy, but it'll be that kind of vibe, Like,
yeah. Well, you're already getting there, and there are people are leaving with, they're walking away from California. They're walking away from the blue states. And the thing is, they're bringing their mentality to the red states. That's a fucking disaster. But anyway, California is fucking screwed. California is just dump it in the ocean already. It's over. But about the South, I would not be able to tell you how things are going to go in the South. And frankly, it's too early to tell. This convoy in Canada, this is giving a lot of people a lot of fucking ideas. And so we're going to have to see how this plays out. Okay. There's a convoy going on in New Zealand. There's a convoy going on in France. There's a convoy there's a big demonstration in Australia going on, like I mentioned previously in the broadcast. So, and people in the States are starting to do it too. Weirdly, some BLM people are like doing a convoy against racism or some shit like that. What the fuck, man?
Yeah.
So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that, see, this Canadian convoy, the fucking Canucks, man, you never thought that those fuckers would be the ones to lead the revolution. They're too fucking polite to lead the revolution. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, they had enough, and they're doing this shit, and we're gonna have to see how it plays out. I think that the real telling thing will be how many Canadian cops join the sides of the protesters, because that'll give an indication to a lot of the Western countries how many of their own cops will leave. Because the calculation, if I were like a Western leader in any country other than Canada, I'd be looking at these convoys real closely, these demonstrations real closely, looking at the Trudeau government that's going to crack down, and I'd want to know how many of the Canadian cops did not crack down on the protesters, and instead put down their batons and join the protesters. Because, see, the Canadians, the number of defectors from the Canadian police is going to be like the minimum number for all the other countries in the West of defectors. You see, in all the other countries, it'll be that number or greater. Okay. Because like the Canadian cops, Canadians in general, are incredibly polite and incredibly compliant. And so whatever cop leaves the Canadian Royal Mounted Police or whatever the fuck, that's going to be like the lowest you can get. And see, that's something that I'd be very worried. I'd want to know how many of my own security people are going to defect. You see?
Yeah.
Because that'll tell me how much support I actually have. Because at the end of the day, a government is only as strong as the monopoly of force that it has. And if the monopoly of force that it has disintegrates in the face of a protest like this, i.e., the cops refuse to enforce the orders of the leadership, then that shows you how weak the leadership really is. And so, yeah, I think that Trudeau is a fool. And it's not just Trudeau. I mean, Trudeau is not making the decisions. The people making the decisions are like a cabal of advisors and party people and whatnot. And the issue becomes, these people, instead of doing the smart thing, which is to negotiate with the truckers, they created this, either you do what we say or we, what are you going to do? I mean, Trudeau went so far as to essentially threaten their kids. What the fuck is wrong with this asshole? I mean, it
Well,
was
he's descended from Castro.
yeah, Justin Castro. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, there's a rumor going around that Justin Trudeau is actually the love child of Fidel Castro and Margaret Trudeau. And when they compare pictures of Justin and Fidel when he was young, they look an awful lot alike. I mean, they look an awful, like, holy shit, do they look alike? I mean, like the nose. Have you noticed?
Yeah, the nose is the same, the lips,
And
the ears.
the cheeks.
Yeah. If you look at pictures of the Queen, or George Bush Sr., his wife looks just like Aleister Crowley. And I don't know if you know who he is, but there are a lot of connections between Aleister Crowley and the Bush family. So people
I
said
didn't
at
know
some
that.
point they just
I
pounded
didn't
it
know
out
that.
with some weird
Yeah.
sex ritual. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I do know is that Justin Trudeau, he's not going to be prime minister for very long. Well, look, I look, frankly, nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows. It's going to be, these are some of the most interesting times in like a long time. This is going to be fucking fun. And how this is going to play out, yeah, I don't know.
They don't know what they're doing, and we don't know what we're doing yet. Everything's
exactly.
a fucking spitball, and everything's coming right now.
I have to emphasize this point, okay? Don't think that these people are smart. I think that that's the mistake that people like us in the resistance or opposition, or call us what you will, we fall into this trap of thinking that the elites actually know what the fuck they're doing. They don't. They're just so dumb and retarded, and they make the worst fucking decisions because they're scared. You know, they're because they rarely, if ever, make an independent decision. You see what I'm saying?
The only solution, and this is my last thing before I go, but
Right.
the only solution is we need a French Revolution. And I'm not advocating for violence, but I am saying that we need something on the lens of a French Revolution-esque thing going on, and we need a Napoleon. We need a man who can put his hands behind his back and march towards all of his men, and they can come back to him.
We need a Tata Augusto. We need a mi General Pinochet. We need somebody who will restore the whole thing. Yeah.
We need you to come back to the West and lead. We need to get you a little beret and the Napoleon uniform, and you can do this with your shirt pocket.
Like have the sideways hat. No.
Yeah.
Anyway, great talking to you, Jonathan. Take it easy.
Of course, you too, Coach.
Hey, Igor, how's it going?
Good evening, Mr. Gonzalo. How is the war zone, so-called Ukraine?
Yeah, pretty good. You know, I don't hear any shelling yet. No machine gun fire, no tanks. So all good so far, I guess.
Yeah, the keyboards at the United States, they're firing really, really hard. Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. So what's on your mind, Igor?
Mr. Gonzalo, as somebody who has been to Switzerland and who has a lot of experience in upper class world, I just wanted to ask you, as somebody who advocated for private schools, what are your opinion on Swiss private schools for your kids, and are they going woke? I know for a fact that boarding schools in London are getting woke, because I talked to some rich Russian men, and they say it's whole nonsense, and they're thinking to sending them to somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to look at each school. Bottom line. Now, the idea of putting your kid into any private school is because you want your kid to socialize with a certain class of people that will be useful to them in the future. Now, if you want to have your kids socialize with rich people in Swiss schools, right? Well, you better have some money to back it up, or else that your kid is going to get left behind. Okay. And it's far worse for your kid to feel socially inferior to his classmates than to go to a very good private school in your own country or city. You see what I'm saying? I know I've ballparked Swiss schools. It's roughly 300,000 a year per kid. That's what it really costs. Okay, between the tuition, between this, that, the other, and traveling and all the rest of it. About 200 to 300, depending on the school, depending on factors. It's a big investment. And so what do you want the kid to get? Okay. Is it worth it? Okay. I mean, you got to keep that in mind. And it doesn't pay to send the kid to a second tier school in Switzerland, because it'll be surrounded with second tier people that won't mean shit in the future. See, so if you're going to send your kid to a Swiss private school, you better send them to Le Roisy, or just, go big or go home. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, there's that situation. And what do you want the kid to get out of it? Okay.
Sure. I do understand you what you're saying, but I was just thinking, are they worth the money? I'm asking you because I have never been in
It depends on where you are in your life. Look, if you have international businesses and it's enough that your kids will inherit it, and you want your kids to have international friends, basically somebody in every major country in the world, then sure, they would be worth your while. But if, for instance, you're really locked into the local society of your country, the upper class society of your country, then why would you send your kid to a Swiss school? You'd want to send them to the best private school in your country. You see?
Sure, yeah.
Like, for instance, here in Kharkov, to give a specific example, here in Kharkov, there are two good schools. There's Boyko and there's Ranok, right? And Boyko is actually kind of like better for the older kids, right? And Ranok is better for the younger kids, and like say between kindergarten and, I don't know, 6th grade or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, those are the two good private schools. There are a bunch of private schools. There are a bunch of public schools. But those are the two really good private schools. And everybody who is well off goes to one of those two schools. It says their kids, rather, to one of those two schools. Okay. And sometimes they send them to both schools. Sort of like they send the younger kids to Ranok and the older kids to Boyko. Anyway, if you're going to be living in Kharkov, for instance, and you want your kids to have like a lot of friends in Kharkov's society, then keeping them in these two schools is a smart idea. If you send them, if I were to send my kids, for instance, to a Swiss boarding school, just say for the sake of argument, well, they'll make friends with those kids in the Swiss boarding school, but they won't make friends with the kids in the Kharkov private schools because they're not going to be here, right? They're going to be away in Switzerland. And so because of that, they're not going to have social contacts here in Kharkov, which is their native city. Now, see, if they make friends with people in Switzerland, that's all good and fine. But if they don't make friends with the people in their local city, then they're not going to have a base. You see what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
And so you have to think of it in those terms. What are your long-term ambitions for your kids? You see, that's what you have to be thinking. Where do you see them growing and flourishing? Do you want them growing and flourishing like internationally, like a citizen of the world kind of thing? Or do you want them to have really strong roots in your own city? And perhaps you could do this. Send them for most of their schooling to the really good private school in your city. And for their final year, or perhaps final 2 years, send them to a Swiss boarding school, just for those last 2 years.
Sure.
Sending them, and that way they have like the best of both worlds. They have a really strong connection with their peers in their city, and at the same time they spend a couple of years in the Swiss school and they make friends with these international kids, and potentially they can go everywhere, to visit them and shit like that in the future, right? They have these long-term relationships. So that would be like the best of both worlds.
Sure.
Frankly,
I
that's my
appreciate
plan.
that.
Yeah, that's my plan with my own kids. My plan with my own kids, I don't have a problem saying it's no big secret, is to have them go to really, really good private schools here in Kharkiv, which is their city.
Mhm.
And when they're like 16, send them for a year or two to some really good private school in Switzerland. I know some people who went to Le Roisy. They could write up some letters of recommendation, would be no trouble, and get them into a good Swiss school for a year or two to improve their French and maybe pick up German and make some good friends and have a good time, quite frankly. And that kind of extra polish is always going to be useful. Yeah, that's my thinking at this point. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. But I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about Switzerland? Do you see it going woke as a country, or
No. The Swiss are way too pragmatic. But I
why?
wouldn't want to live in Switzerland. I'll
Why?
tell you that. Why? Well, no offense to any Swiss listener, but I've been to Switzerland lots of times. I've been going there since 2000, and I usually go at least once a year on business or to go skiing, or both. And what I can say is that the Swiss are obsessed with money, and they're really just like focused on money to an extent that is kind of like, I think it's a little bit unhealthy, and I don't like them, to tell you the truth. Honest to God. I mean, if we're being like, no fucking around, I don't kind of like them. I think they're too obsessed with money, and the only time that they're nice to you is when you're at their restaurants or hotels, and they know that you're going to spend money there. But they're most of the time they're kind of nasty. Like the Germans are kind of like they're kind of brutal, but they're not. They're impersonal. Okay, they're just very autistic, right?
Sure.
But the Swiss, they seem kind of nasty. I'm not crazy about them, to tell you the truth. Sorry. And like I said, I mean no offense to anybody who's Swiss who's listening to me, but they seem kind of nasty. And the obsession with money is really kind of creepy and ugly, But that's been my experience. And
Sure,
at
sure.
first,
And
I really loved Switzerland. I really loved Switzerland. I thought it was so clean and so pretty, and it is a gorgeous country. And it was so pretty, and the mountains and the goats and all that good shit, the cheeses, blah blah, and so pretty, and all the rest of it, and so efficient and so clean, right? But I started noticing that it's there's something unhealthy about it,
it
you
does
know?
not have a soul, if you're thinking about that.
Something like that. It's kind of creepy, I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
I wouldn't want to live there. That's my bottom line feeling.
And
Okay,
coach,
but
I
I
have
do think, it is the safest country on the planet. Okay,
really.
bottom line, if you have like a real crisis, that's where you want to go. Yeah, and yeah, go ahead.
I just want to have one question and one observation, which I'm very interested what you're going to think about it.
Okay.
But the last question is, what kind of a work environment and would be like the work environment of the Ocean 11 the type of style? If you get me, like usually you have a workplace where you have a hierarchy. You have a guy who is at the top, and you have people who are working under him. Like most jobs are like that, but that the Ocean 11 type of stuff is pretty decentralized. Something like Wall Street, yeah, sure, you have a guy above you, but you're all pumping adrenaline. You're all in the same trouble. You're trying to solve problems.
Hmm.
Because it's a truly bonding experience. It's my favorite movie, not because they're fucking criminals, but because
Uh-huh.
that guys solving problems. It's very primal. At the end of Ocean 11, when they're at the fountain, and
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
it's a gorgeous scene, and
It is.
guys, regular guys trying to solve a problem, and they're having a blast, and they're teasing each other, and that's the kind of place I want to work in. And to tell you honestly, that's a lot of highly efficient organizations. For example, Navy SEALs are like that. The most efficient
A film
jewelry
production is like that.
thieves.
A film production is exactly like that.
Sure, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
everybody pulling together. Yeah. Look, bottom line, our society has given up on that because in order to have a materially rich society with a lot of consumer goods available to all for very little money, in order to achieve that, you have to give up that notion that you're a team all working together. See, you have to give up the concept of the tribe because, like, with every benefit, there is a cost. No, there's no such benefit that has no costs. And in so far as the industrial society that we have that has created this material prosperity, the cost is having those communities with long and deep histories of working with one another, of people working with one another, and that kind of camaraderie. That is the price you pay for having an industrialized society that provides so much material abundance to such a wide group of people. That's the bottom line. See,
Sure, sure.
and it's a cost that um, we all sense that we are missing it. Okay, because look, it all comes back to this idea of guys in a tribe all going off together to hunt the woolly mammoth. I know you fuckers always make fun of me for bringing up the woolly mammoth,
Yes,
right?
we do.
Yeah, but it's the best because that's how we evolved. And so we get enormous satisfaction when we're out there, a bunch of guys hunting the fucking beast, and we succeed. And this guy does this, and this guy has nets, and this guy has spears, and this guy, scares the woolly mammoth to go in one direction or whatever the fuck. And he's risking his life to scare the fucking animal to go in that direction so that the guy with the spear can stick him and the guy with the net can throw it over him and all the rest of it. And everybody works together and everybody takes risks and everybody does their best. And at the end, the fucking woolly mammoth is dead and we've got food for a fucking month. And we're all standing around the corpse of this fucking thing. And we're really, really fucking satisfied. And we felt that we really fulfilled ourselves. We all worked together. We all made sacrifices. We all put forward our best efforts. And because of it, we're all rewarded. And of course, there are some guys who are like the quote unquote leaders, and some guys who are like the followers, some guys who are really smart and do all the planning, and some other guys who are really good at tracking or whatever the fuck, right? But even the guy who's lowest on the totem pole feels part of the group, and he doesn't mind being lowest on the totem pole because he feels that he's part of this cool group, of this collective.
Sure,
And on
sure.
the flip side, you've got the leader who's not acting like an arrogant dickhead. He's the leader, but he's not leading out of arrogance or out of like some weird egotistical crazy streak, but he's just leading so that, directing people so that everybody succeeds. And he's got that gift of leadership, and we follow him because he knows what he's doing, and when he gives us an order, it's a rational, logical reason. And so we follow him and we succeed and we feel great. And that feeling, see, imagine if woolly mammoths were still alive today, right? They'd be on some fucking farm. Well, cows are on a farm, right?
Yeah.
They'd be on a farm, and it would be an industrial process, and there wouldn't be any team of hunters. Of course not. There would be just farmers managing the fucking woolly mastodon and getting them to the slaughterhouse periodically, fattening them up, maybe getting them some exercise and whatnot, making them nice and fat and juicy, and taking them to the slaughterhouse. And that'd be that. No fucking hunting party, right? No communal sense that we're all in this together.
Sure,
see?
sure.
And is the old system better? Well, no, it's worse, because the current system, the industrialized system, well, in the old system, you had to expend a ton of energy, a ton of effort to capture and kill the one woolly mammoth. In the current system, we can, the farmer can process, 50 woolly mammoths per day, and feed thousands of people with minimal effort. The industrial farming is better. It's more efficient. It's better. It's more efficient. It serves more people. It feeds more people. It's better objectively. But you give up that sense of community. See?
Sure.
That's inevitability. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And with that, boys and girls, that is the end of the broadcast. So, boys, I'm glad to talk to you as always. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, because all of a sudden I'm out of gas. So I'm going to call it a broadcast. Take it easy, and I'll talk to you next time.